That fish was absolutely massive, and it wasn't even fully out of the water yet. I was chilling by my tiny reservoir, out in the absolute boonies, faking like I'm fishing with a totally empty net. Not a single catch, just pure vibes and sadness. Suddenly I hear a voice behind me. Yo, dude, catching anything? As some random angler rolled up, decked out in top-tier, pricey gear. The whole 9 yards. He snooped into my live well like a nosy Karen. Checking your search history, finding squat. Totally dry, big yikes, man. You claim they're biting, but you're sitting on a donut. I try to play it off like I just pulled up. Absolute cap, but it is what it is. This dude, let's call him Zhao Chuanchou. By the way, pass me a smoke. Acting like we've been day one homies for 2 decades. Then he just started yapping nonstop. Dude literally had zero filter or mute button. He was going off about how the feds claimed casual angling isn't considered legit fishing, and got totally triggered by it like, bro, who asked? I'll let him yap, then drop the hammer. Yo, this is a paid fishing zone. Somebody made this a commercial pond. He glanced around at the bare peaks. The absolute lack of infrastructure. The straight up wild, and just cackled at me. The boss here must be brain dead. He'd be better off giving that cash to a charity. Yeah, I'm the guy running this place. Appreciate it, pal. He kept running his mouth. Where's this mastermind? I genuinely want to see this clown's face. I really wanted to just yeet him into the pond. But I just whipped out my payment QR code. Half day is 100 kwai. Full day is 200. We buy back your catch at $2 a pound. WeChat or Alipay, what's it gonna be? The sheer shock when it clicked that I was the dummy. Bossy was roasting? Absolutely priceless. Did he say sorry? Nah. He tried to finesse his way out of the fee, bragging that he's blacklisted from every local pond because his catch rate is too insane, claiming I'd take a massive L on him, saying my buyback rate was a total scam, bro. Just scan the code, and he finally coughed it up. In the exact moment that Hundo dinged on my app, a crazy major alert popped off in my brain. All right, here's the real tea. I possess a system with a capital S. Basically a literal cheat engine for reality. Every single person casting a line in my lake multiplies the growth rate of the fish by 100. So with just my lonely self angling for the last month, these aquatic boys have been bulking up like they're on steroids. 1 single day equals 3 months of evolution. Now with Mr. Yapper joining the squad, the buff stacked to 200x. So how did I end up here? Easy. I snagged a degree from an elite college, scored a corporate gig that paid literal pennies, grinded crazy overtime until my spirit dipped, and my manager treated me like absolute trash. So I rage quit. Retreated back home to fish at this tiny pond. And that's exactly when the system chose me. The blueprint was flawless. Lure a massive crowd to fish here. Buff the fish growth to absolutely OP levels. Flip those aquatic monsters, secure the bag. Bag a 10 baddie, and live that boss life. The reality check? A whole month passed without a single soul. I spammed ads online. I practically begged people to pull up, but was a total ghost town. I mean, this spot is a 2-hour drive from civilization, plus a 30-minute hike just to get here. Big shocker that it wasn't exactly going viral, right? So, I've literally been paying myself to fish at my own pond. Just me, solo, acting as my very own VIP client. A little pathetic? Maybe, but get this. Those underwater beasts have been leveling up for what equals over 8 years in game time. So, someone got to be absolute units by now. Enter Zhao Chuanchou, who finally pulled up and officially claimed the title of customer number 1. My beautiful, highly annoying, very first patron. Dude immediately flexed about catching a 100-pounder once and claimed the whole squad calls him Joe. 100 pounds. I casually dropped that there could be 200-pound leviathans in here. He called cap on that and swore if I wasn't bluffing, he'd fish me straight into bankruptcy. Little does this guy know, the longer he grinds here and the more hype this place gets, the more massive these fish become. So please, my guy, put me out of business. I double dog dare you. Right mid-conversation, his pole aggressively yanked. He had just chucked his line in, and something was already munching on it. His eyes bugged out like, already? Before he flashed this unhinged, villainous smirk. Better go prep a chicken, boss, because my payout is about to leave you broke. He heaved the rod back, and whatever was on the other side, it was fighting back with zero chill. Meanwhile, me, I just stood off to the side, grinning ear to ear, because every single catch he lands is pure marketing that this spot is legit. And every new face that rocks up just buffs the fish's growth rate even more. Keep talking your smack, Joe. 100 pounds. You're literally making me wealthy, and you're totally clueless. So this dude, Zhao Chuanchou, snagged an absolute titan. His pole bent into a full rainbow, and his face went straight tomato mode, trying to hold his ground. I rushed over because, look, this is literally my first paying client ever. I kind of need him breathing and leaving a 5-star review. The fish was dragging him through the dirt like a dog walking its owner. His shoes lost traction. He wiped out hard on his backside. And this guy still had the audacity to push my help away. I am Joe, 100 pounds. This is light work. Yeah, sure, buddy. You're literally eating dirt right now. Suddenly, the fish breached. A humongous green carp tail smacked the water surface. It was majestic, low-key terrifying, and way too OP for his budget setup. Literally 3 seconds later, crack. The rod totally splintered at the second joint. Half of it got yanked into the depths and disappeared. Joe got launched backward and caught a rock with the back of his dome. Did he complain about the concussion? Nope. Dude was crying over the catch. My 100-pound fish. Bro looked so utterly devastated, like he just took the biggest L of his life. Now here comes the absolute plot twist. Instead of losing his cool like a normal human being, this absolute jigachad whipped out his phone, snapped a pic of his shattered pole, and flexed it all over social media. His caption was low-key wild. 200-pound monster broke my rod. Coming back tomorrow with heavy artillery. If I don't bankrupt this boss for good, I'll literally change my last name to Fish. His comment section was pure gold with his boys calling him out. Some random named Wong asking for the exact coordinates, because it gave him flashbacks to where his ex ghosted him for choosing fishing over their relationship. Then Wong's ex suddenly pulled up in the comments asking why he was capping again. And Joe's wife chimed right in saying, "You want the last name Fish? Then go sleep with the fishes tonight, bestie." Right on cue, his phone buzzed with his wife screaming at him. Turns out he told her he was posting up at the hospital, playing nurse for a sick homie. She could literally hear the howling wind through the speaker. Totally busted, he packed up his whole setup in like 20 minutes flat. But peep this though. My system status window showed that even after he bounced, the time dilation was still locked at 200x. His little pit stop meant every single aquatic life in my reservoir was now aging at 200 times the regular speed. My system panel mapped out all the breeds swimming in there. Crucian carp, common carp, grass carp, green carp, big head, and at the absolute bottom, one cursed category called mutated species. 0 so far, but that exact detail keeps me wide awake at night. If the clock ticks fast enough, actual evolution kicks in. So what happens when a fish starts evolving? Do they grow legs and launch a startup company? I decided to brush that thought right off. Hiked the 30-minute trail back to my village. And right on schedule. The local neighborhood gossip association was holding court. Oh, look who decided to grace us with his presence. Slacking off fishing behind everyone's backs. They were calling me lazy, completely useless, and draining my parents' hard-earned cash. Apparently, assembly line workers in the village were pulling in more than my old corporate salary. So my fancy college degree was basically a running joke to them. I've been hearing this nonstop for a whole month. Whatever, let the haters talk their talk. Stumbled back home to an empty house. Parents grinding miles away, sister married off out of town. Just me and a sad cup of instant ramen, spiked with chili oil and pickled veggies. Living my absolute best life, right? Back when I told my pops a month ago that I wanted to lease this reservoir, he went off on me and said absolutely not happening. Then 2 days later, the funds magically dropped into my account anyway. That is peak dad love right there screaming at you, while low-key funding your most unhinged ideas behind your back. My checking account was down to literal single digits. Single digits, F-yeah. I kept telling myself tough times never last long. But my bank app was starting to heavily disagree. Next morning, I was still knocked out in bed, dreaming about cashing checks, when someone started screaming right outside my front door, acting like an unhinged alarm clock. "Boss, get your ass up. Rise and shine. The sun's already baking your backside." I caught that voice instantly, without missing a beat. Joe 100 pounds was back in action, and this time he brought backup. I yanked the door open, and boom, there he was, grinning, like he didn't just snap his favorite fishing rod in half yesterday. Right next to him stood a fresh-faced guy in his early 20s, plus an older dude pushing 40. My brain immediately went into calculator mode. 3 fresh clients equals triple the payout, no cap. My heart started doing backflips out of pure hype. Before I could even spit out a morning greeting, Joe was already pulling me along. "Let's get moving, boss." "Shake a leg," the older guy chimed in, who turned out to be some bigwig in building materials, responding to the name Wong Bin. He dropped by to see if that massive 200-pound catch was actually legit. Or total cap. I literally almost choked on my spit. Yesterday's fish barely hit 100 pounds. On a really good day, mind you, and Joe had hyped it up like a shady dealer rolling back odometer mileage. Just in reverse, but hey, I kept my lips firmly zipped. Because why would I ghost a golden wave of free promo? I tried playing the gracious host. You guys grab grub yet? I can toss some noodles in a pot. My stomach was low-key screaming. Last night's sad bowl of instant ramen had completely bailed on me by midnight, and I've been running on pure starvation vibes ever since. The younger guy, Wong Bu Yuan, who turned out to be Wong Bin's nephew, straight up shoved 4 steamed buns and a cup of soy milk right into my hands. Before I could even put up a fake polite protest. Zero time for manners. He just loaded the snacks onto me, like I was a walking delivery cart. Not gonna lie, I was way too hangry to argue back. So I just started devouring food on the move. We strolled right through the village, and, naturally, of course my second aunt was posted up there with her cooking pot, ready to deal maximum emotional damage. Oh look, you found little Hao. Where are you guys all headed? I cracked a smile. We're heading up to the reservoir for a fishing session, second aunt. She tilted her head with a side eye. Fishing, just like you do every single day, only to crawl back empty-handed. The awkward silence hit like a truck. Joe's expression went dead serious. My brand new client's very first impression of my fishing spot was officially the zone where nobody catches a damn thing. Thanks a ton, Annie. That's an absolute W for the business. I rushed to do damage control. They're pro anglers, Annie. Totally different league than me. She squinted straight at Joe, for real though. Because that young kid yesterday also trudged home with 0 fish. Joe spun right around and marched off without uttering a syllable. The other 2 were fighting hard to hold back their laughter. I honestly wanted the concrete to open up and swallow me whole. Down by the main road, I spotted their ride. A shiny Land Rover. My jaw literally hit the floor. Wealthy folks, actual legit rich people. And my humble, middle-of-nowhere fishing hole. Wong Bin was clearly crushing it with his heavy-duty construction enterprise, while his nephew, Wong Bu Yuan, was theoretically on his payroll, though actually calling that working felt like a massive stretch of the imagination. Living paycheck to paycheck hits different. Wong Bin slid into my DMs, asking if we could drive up to the reservoir. Joe, who had already scouted the terrain yesterday, clued us in that a landslide was totally blocking part of it, and the pathway was absolute trash anyway. Wong Bin was huffing and puffing the whole way up the hill. Boss, you seriously need to fix this route. He gasped between breaths. He wasn't lying if I wanted to pull in more customers. I needed a decent driveway up there, but that takes mad bread. And my bank account was currently hanging on by a thread in the instant ramen budget tier. So I just nodded and played it off. Working on it for real, totally working on it. We finally dragged ourselves to the reservoir. Wong Bin was completely bent over, wheezing like he just ran an entire marathon. Joe couldn't let it slide, Wong. You really need to hit the gym. Wong Bin shot back, I get my reps in every single night. Joe smirked, no cap that explains why you're so out of shape. I pretended I didn't hear that shady banter. Then the best part happened. All 3 of them forked over the cash. 600 yuan hit my mobile wallet, and the system chimed in my head, sounding like pure angelic frequencies. 4 fishermen total now running at 400x speed, which meant every single day, the aquatic life in my reservoir was aging over a year. Some of those fish down there were probably evolving so intensely fast. You could practically see it happening in real time. The small fry were basically speed running. Evolution itself. Joe staked out his exact same spot from yesterday. He came fully prepared this time. An 8-meter heavy-duty rod. Super thick braided line, the whole setup. He was definitely not blowing it this time. He pointed straight at the dirt hole, where he jammed his pole yesterday, treating it like a sacred war shrine. This is the exact spot right here, where the fish completely jumped me. Total cheap shot meanwhile. Wong Bin and his nephew scoped out their own areas and started pulling a stunt that made Joe's eye twitch. Aggressively, they were straight up dumping chum into the water, not casting it carefully, just throwing huge chunks in, like they were feeding ducks at a public park. Massive balls of bait material, making massive splashes in the reservoir. Back to back, Joe stared at them in disbelief. Are you guys actually feeding the fish? Or we're trying to artificially fill up the lake? If you dump that much food in there, the fish are going to stuff themselves and completely ignore your hooks. You got to use strategic, tiny amounts. Wong Bin looked back at Joe with the most innocent, confused look on his face. Bruh, everyone knows if there's no bait in the water, there's no catch on your hook. You got to be generous, my guy. Basic fishing meta. His nephew nodded along instantly. Facts, Joe. That's literally what the online fishing gurus preach. Joe looked like a guy watching someone squirt ketchup all over an expensive steak. In actual physical pain bait, is supposed to lure the fish in, instead of dropping a whole buffet on them. You drop just a bit and feed them slow, no cap. It is all about that grind and patience. Then Wangbin pulled up and dropped a straight-up roast, delivered with a totally stone-cold poker face, and zero chill whatsoever. No wonder you always head back home totally empty-handed. You are way too stingy to even use enough bait. Joe's jaw dropped open, then slammed shut, then opened right back up while he stayed totally speechless. I had to look away fast so nobody would catch me dying of laughter. This was low-key the absolute best show I'd seen all month, and it was entirely free of charge. Well, not totally free for them, though. They literally paid me 600 yuan for the total flex of roasting each other, right at my reservoir while deep down below the surface. Hundreds of aquatic beasts were getting massive by the second, growing 400 times faster than Mother Nature ever planned. My totally broke and bankrupt, middle of nowhere fishing side hustle was finally starting to vibe and move forward in a totally wild and hilarious way. Joe Heavyweight was just chilling at his usual spot, looking super salty because Wangbin and his nephew had tossed enough bait into the water to feed every single fish across 3 whole provinces. He wanted to pack up and move away from them, but he could not because yesterday's massive catch hit right on that exact spot. So he just sat there grinding his teeth, trying to do things his way until suddenly something went down that practically fried the man's brain. Wangbin hooked a bite within mere minutes. His fishing float vanished under the water, like someone yanked it straight down with a heavy rope. He reeled in a crucian carp weighing nearly 2 solid pounds. 2 whole pounds for a crucian carp. That is basically a gym bro bodybuilder fish. Wangbin was grinning so insanely wide, I genuinely thought his face would split in half. I told him there was plenty more where that legendary catch came from, though deep inside my head, I was having a major existential crisis. I have been trying to fish here every single day for a whole month. Literally every single day, and I caught absolute zero nada. Joe shows up just yesterday and hooks a total monster on his very first cast. Wangbin shows up today and catches a fish before his pants. Could even get warm on the folding chair. Was I actually that ridiculously bad at fishing? Or was the universe running some kind of sick cosmic prank, where the actual owner of the reservoir is the one unlucky guy who can never catch a single thing? I was low-key starting to suspect my own system was trolling me hard. Then Wang Buiyuan started hyping up and yelling too. Another fish hit, then another, and another right after. Those two were pulling fish out of the water nonstop, like they had secret high-tech magnets on their hooks. In just 2 hours, they had hauled in over 10 fish between them, literally 10. I cannot catch 10 fish in 10 lifetimes. Let us be real. And they were doing it using that totally wild method of dumping metric tons of bait right into the lake. That Joe had explicitly warned them was completely wrong. Meanwhile, Joe, the self-proclaimed expert, the legendary heavyweight champion himself, was just sitting there with his fancy schmancy technique and his tightly measured micro portions of bait, catching absolutely nothing at all. Bro was literally watching his whole worldview shatter into pieces, live on stream. His eyes had that deadpan stare of a guy who just found out water is dry after spending his entire life teaching oceanography. Right in the peak of Joe's absolute mental breakdown, his phone started buzzing. He glanced at the display and pulled that exact face, where you can literally watch someone's soul ghosting their physical body. He picked up quietly while sidestepping away from the squad. Babe, I'm on the grind. Major stakeholder meeting today. I could hear his wifey loud and clear from where I was chilling, and she was definitely not catching any vibes. Turns out she actually rolled up to his physical office, where the front desk spilled the tea. That Joe hadn't even clocked in once today. He was down bad and totally cooked. But Joe 100 pounds is a certified mastermind when cornered. Panicking under pressure, he whipped his head around, spotted Wangbin, and dashed over at full speed. He shoved the device into Wangbin's hands and whispered in pure panic mode, "It's my missus, tell her we're locking in on a design blueprint." Wangbin snatched that phone, like a clutch player intercepting a pass. In the final seconds of a championship game, this legend was just built different. He slipped right into character without missing a single beat. "Yo, what's good, sis-in-law? It's Wong, your residential construction plug. Yo, we're running a massive renovation collab, and your hubby is the only goat I trust with the architectural aesthetic fishing." What kind of fishing do I look like? Some kind of lazy bum out here side questing during corporate hours. Absolute cinema performance. Oscar tier acting. I was ready to drop a standing ovation. But the algorithm of life has zero comedic timing. Because right at that exact millisecond, while Wong Bin was clutching Joe's phone in one hand and his fishing pole in the other, something an absolute unit of a beast bit his hook. His fishing arm violently snapped downward. An insane amount of pressure yanked from beneath the surface. The kind of heavy pull that lets you know whatever is down there literally needs its own area code. Wong Bin's eyes turned wide as saucers. He stared at the cell, then stared at the pole. Phone pole. Phone pole. He chose the pole. He punted that phone onto the dirt like it was radioactive, and gripped his rod with a double-handed death clutch. Whatever was lurking deep down was dragging him straight to the ledge. He stumbled ahead and nearly went for an unplanned swim. The fishing line was literally screaming through the water, making that terrifying high-pitched, buzzing sound. That's a universal warning sign that a boss-level threat is locked on the other end. Joe dropped everything and sprinted over to back him up. The dynamic duo initiated an all-out boss battle with this fish, yanking, struggling, and grunting for dear life. Pull it in, Wong. And I was just standing back enjoying the live show, completely oblivious to the fact that the phone on the floor was still active. Joe's wifey was still dead-ass on the line, and she could hear everything. Joe chwanching, you're fishing again. What kind of work is this? Fishing school, get home in 10 minutes, or I'm smashing every single one of your rods. Did you hear me? I want a divorce. The phone was basically a tiny, screaming rectangle on the ground, but Joe couldn't hear any of it. He was completely locked in, battling this absolute unit from the deep. The woman could have announced nuclear war, and he wouldn't have even flinched. The grind lasted over an hour. The fish broke the surface once, and Wong Boy went feral, screaming that it was a black-backed green carp. Its tail alone was bigger than my entire face. Wong Bing had totally gassed out early on, and was just chilling on the sidelines, panting hard. So Joe stepped up to take over the main rod work. 20 minutes later, the fish surfaced again, fully exposed, this time blackback. White belly head the size of a washing basin body, stretching over a meter long, a genuine prehistoric beast. When a monster finally gave up and rolled over, Wong Bin snatched the landing net and bolted to the shore. Wong whined straight up, dove straight into the water to tackle the thing. The fish made one final desperate thrash and almost slipped out of his grasp. But the net held strong while Wong Bing panicked and jumped in two. Two grown men aggressively wrestling a fish in waist-deep water, while Joe stood frozen on the bank, shaking from pure fatigue. It was low-key the most aesthetic and wild sequence I had ever witnessed. They dragged it on a land and weighed it down. 68 pounds and 1 meter. 30 cm long à certified heavyweight menace. Then came a mandatory photo shoot. They desperately wanted clout pictures with the catch. Solo portraits, group shots. Every single angle, they made me snap at least a dozen photos, acting like I was their personal paparazzi at the world's most chaotic wedding. Then Wong Bin decided he needed selfies with the beast. Two, he patted his pockets down, gazing around, asking, where's my phone? We all collectively stared at the dirt where he had tossed it, back when the fish first struck and Joe's wife was yelling into it, continuously for over an hour. The call was still active the entire time. Not a single soul uttered a word. The awkward silence hit harder than a splash wave. Joe finally spotted his phone on the ground, bearing a fresh boot print right on the display. He picked it up, checked the timer, seeing the call hit 31 minutes, and realized his wife had been screaming into the void. That whole duration while he was deep in battle with a fish. The smart play would have been calling her back immediately, but Joe did not take the smart route. He figured he would just deal with the massive fallout later. Right now, there were flex photos to secure. All three of them uploaded their content to social media instantly. Wong Bin's post was actually iconic. He sprawled out flat on the mud beside the fish, and the creature was honestly almost his exact height. He stands at roughly 5'7", and this giant carp was giving him a serious run for his money. His caption was the ultimate subtle flex. Came back to the place where my girlfriend dumped me. Nothing crazy going on here, just reeled in a tiny green carp. Bro literally called a 68-pound prehistoric river monster tiny. The comment section went completely wild. Folks were spamming for the coordinates. His cousin straight up didn't buy that he actually caught it. Some random asked if the fish had any brothers or sisters they could link up with. And his ex even pulled up in the replies, asking if he actually went out there. My man was living his absolute best life. Joe's post was low-key blowing up too, but I caught on as something sus. His wife didn't drop a comment, nor did she text him back. That kind of dead silence from a mad wife is giving major Category 5 hurricane vibes. Joe noticed it too and clammed up for a sec. probably doing the math on how many days he had left to live, then just shrugged it off like a boss. That's a problem for future Joe to stress about. Wong Bing rolled up on me and asked how much for the catch. I laid it out. Anything past 20 pounds sets you back 20 yuan a pound to haul home. Joe nearly went into cardiac arrest. You pay us for the catch, but charge 20 to take it out of here? That's daylight robbery, bro. I just shrugged. They could always toss it back. And I'd cash them out with a buyback price instead. Wong Bing didn't even bat an eye. For a unit like this, I drop 100-pound no cap. My guy knew quality, and his nephew crunched the numbers. 48 pounds over the 20-pound limit. 960 yuan hit my phone, and I felt the warmth deep in my soul. Not spiritually warm, financially blessed. My bank account was finally escaping single-digit jail. Then Wong Bing dropped a take that made me realize these guys had brain rot priorities I could never wrap my head around. He stared at his nephew and yelled, "Why are we still lingering here? We gotta go flex this beast." Joe clicked right away. A massive fish strapped to the back of a Land Rover. That's straight up the cleanest aesthetic in existence. They started packing their gear at Mach speed, even ditching all the smaller catches they pulled earlier. Gorgeous, chonky crushing carp, just chucked back into the lake like loose pocket change. I tried to check if they wanted any buyback cash for those, but they literally couldn't care less. Those fish were beneath their status. Now, they had a 68-pound flex trophy and a bougie SUV to stun it with. Then reality hit like a truck. The fish weighed 68 pounds. The reservoir was a brutal 30-minute hike, uphill away from the village, and these three dudes had the combined athletic stamina of a dusty, old couch cushion. They made it roughly 200 meters before Wong Bing and Joe were completely doubled over, wheezing, with the fish just chilling on the dirt right beside them. Like it was taking a smoke break, too. Wong Yuan hollered at me, "Boss, please, help us lug this down, 200 yuan right now." Now, I'm a proud graduate from a top-tier university. I put in 4 years grinding through books. I got a legit degree, but what I do not have is gains. I'm basically a noodle with legs out here, though I didn't know people who were stacked. I dialed up my second uncle first. Second aunt picked up instead. And let me know. He headed to the market and totally lost his phone. Major dead end, so I hit up Grandpa Shang. Not my actual blood grandpa, though. Just one of those classic village quirks where a dude in his 40s somehow outranks me by 2 whole generations. Because rural family trees make 0 sense. His real name is Ding Jishiang, and bro is built like he was pieced together from leftover tractor parts. He rolled up in under 20 minutes flat, took one look at that absolute unit of a fish, and went wide-eyed. "This came straight out of your reservoir?" I puffed my chest out a bit. "Yep." These pro anglers reeled it right on up. Ding Jishiang guessed it was around 50 or 60 pounds. Womban instantly checked him, "Nah, 68. My man was not about to let his prize catch lose a single pound to some lowball estimate, and Grandpa Shang just laughed and said, carrying 68 pounds was nothing. He could easily shoulder 168. He shoved the beast into a heavy nylon sack, slung it over his shoulder, and started blazing down the trail, like he was carrying a fluffy cloud of cotton candy. His boots navigated that rough mountain path, like it was a smooth, paved highway, while the rest of us were low-key jogging just to keep pace. This rugged farmer with calloused hands was casually styling on a bunch of younger dudes, with his sheer speed while hauling a heavy-ass fish that weighed heavier than most kids once we rolled back into the village. That monster catch instantly pulled a crowd. Everyone swarmed around, gawking at this massive green carp. The exact same locals who were calling me lazy and useless just last week were suddenly singing a totally different tune. Bro, no way the reservoir has fish this ginormous. How many years has that water been sitting there? Untouched, Ding? You seriously hit the jackpot leasing that spot out. I ain't gonna lie, hearing all that felt surreal. A week ago, I was the village punching bag. Now I was the flexer who owned a secret reservoir loaded with boss-tier fish. Crazy how 68 pounds of prime carp can completely flip the narrative overnight. Grandpa Shang carted the fish right over to the Land Rover and hung it securely from the tailgate. Under Wong Bin's strict supervision, the giant aquatic beast dangled off the back of the SUV, almost dragging on the dirt. A 68-pound green carp, hanging off a Land Rover dead center in a tiny mountain village, while farmers stood around recording it on their phones. It looked like the thumbnail for the weirdest clickbait video ever. Wong Bin promised me the views were going to roll in. Tomorrow your setup is going to blow up big time. I watched them roll out with their trophy fish, swaying behind the whip, and started zoning in on my system. Panel for anglers today. Running at 400x speed, those fish down in the murky depths were growing like crazy while I just stood here, stacking my paper, and if Wong Bin's upcoming social media wave was any hint at all, tomorrow was going to bring way more than just a handful of grandpas. Grandpa Shang strapped that fish to the back of the Land Rover, like he was throwing holiday lights on a Christmas tree. Wong Bin checked it out, nodding like a general scoping out a war strategy, and told his nephew to drop 200 yuan on the guy for less than 30 minutes of heavy lifting. Grandpa Shang strolled off, cheesing so hard. His face looked permanently locked in place. Not gonna lie, I was low-key salty. He bagged 200 bucks just using his bare back, while I pull 960 using an OP. Time-bending fish farming system. We were built different, yet somehow he still managed to look like the absolute main character. Right before peeling out, Wong Bin popped his head out the window and reminded me once again to fix up the road leading to the reservoir. I gave him my word, and this time I actually meant business. Once their ride vanished down the dusty village path, I stood there crunching the numbers. Over 15 yuan cleared in a single day. Yesterday my bank app was straight up depressing. Today I could afford actual groceries with real ingredients, maybe even some meat. My absolute genius pricing meta was paying off massively. Super cheap entry fee to bait people into the spot, then hit them with heavy prices when they inevitably decided to flex their prize catch back home. And thanks to my system, massive fish weren't exactly a finite resource. Give it enough time and enough anglers, and I could mass-produce absolute leviathans on industrial scales. Every single player showing up made the fish level up faster. Every monster catch made them hook for good. It was the most cracked business loop ever devised, by a mystical voice whispering inside someone's head. I hit up a contractor about sending an excavator over to clear the landslide debris and smooth out the trail. Nothing too extra, just solid enough for cars to roll through half a day's grind. At most, if more people were going to pull up, they needed actual drivable roads. No one's hiking a 30-minute uphill trek just to hand me cash. Meanwhile, out on the highway, Wong Bin's Land Rover was apparently causing a massive traffic jam. Not because he was speeding like a maniac, not because a luxury SUV is rare, but because there was an absolute unit of a fish hanging off the back of a high-end whip, cruising down a major national expressway. Its tail was literally dragging on the pavement. Folks in neighboring cars were breaking their necks, trying to process what kind of creature they were witnessing. Some dude in a Honda almost wiped out staring at it. Drivers were rolling down their glass and snapping pics. Even a random stray dog on the roadside reportedly gave that giant fish a long, confused stare. You know something is wild when street animals stop to analyze the situation. The three guys were blasting EDM tracks inside the cabin, living their absolute best lives, when suddenly a Wuling minivan started acting super aggressive right behind them. Horns blaring, high beams flashing like crazy, with the passenger leaning halfway out the window, wildly gesturing for them to pull over. Wong Bin slammed the brakes, and the whole car went dead silent. Joe turned ghost white as they all had the exact same intrusive thought. Is strapping a giant fish to your ride actually illegal? Was this some low-key undercover cop rolling up on them? Joe was already doing the math in his head, stressing over how many license points he was about to lose. Suddenly, that minivan screeched to a halt right behind them. Two middle-aged dudes hopped right out and bolted straight toward the Land Rover. But instead of flashing any ticket books, their eyes locked dead onto that fish, like it was straight up made of solid gold. They were hardcore anglers. Obviously, they were anglers. These guys had been tailing the Land Rover for 3 whole kilometers, just trying to catch up. Joe's entire vibe flipped in less than half a second. He stepped smooth out of the ride, leaned back against the rear bumper, right next to that hanging trophy catch, casually throwing one hand over its tail. Like pulling beasts like this was his everyday side hustle, and dropped it with the most unbothered voice ever. Oh, this thing? Yeah. Just reeled it in, barely over 60 pounds or so. Nothing crazy, man. Those two minivan dudes nearly passed out on the spot. They instantly whipped out premium cigarettes and offered one to Joe like he was absolute royalty, begging him for the exact spot where he caught it. Wong Bin made things even better by leaning out his window and flexing. My boy right here actually thinks this fish is pretty small. The local reservoir has way bigger monsters than this. Those guys' eyeballs nearly popped clean out of their heads. Joe milked that main character energy for all it was worth, then effortlessly dropped his WeChat QR code on them, acting like he was doing them a massive favor, warning them to bring heavy-duty gear, or they'd end up crying. They thanked him like 15 times before zooming off, completely buzzing with hype. Wangbin told Joe that the pose he pulled off, leaning against the fish like that, looked straight out of a high-end fishing gear commercial. Joe just gave a chill nod and went, obviously. Then they rolled deep into the county town. And what went down next was something I only caught wind of later on, but I'm putting you guys on blast with it anyway, because it's hands down the most absurd stunt 3 grown men have ever pulled off. Using a dead fish, they cruised down literally every single street, throughout the entire town, every single road, every intersection, every residential block. A high-end luxury Land Rover, creeping through traffic with a massive 1.30 m green carp swinging off the tail end, looking like the most cursed car air freshener on earth. At a red light, some driver in the next lane glanced over, did a massive double take, and nearly climbed out his window just to gawk at it. A kid on the sidewalk started screaming at the top of his lungs. "That fish is bigger than me, bro." People on the streets were pointing fingers, laughing out loud, and pulling out phones to record. Wangbin suggested grabbing some food around 3 in the afternoon, since they'd only survived on 2 steamed buns all day. Joe instantly shut that idea down. "Nah, the shopping district has way more foot traffic. Let's do one more victory lap." Wang Buiyuan co-signed the plan, because he'd spotted some cute girls during their last pass, and wanted another shot at flexing on them by rolling around with a giant flex fish. Joe told him girlfriends are totally mid, and straight up used his own wife as proof. They bickered about this whole thing, while keeping up their cruise around the block, looking like a random parade float for 5 hours straight. They drove endlessly for 5 solid hours, from broad daylight until the street lights flickered on, and their gas tank was running on fumes. 5 hours of flexing a single fish. Their pure, clout-chasing energy outlasted the actual gas. But this is where the lore gets crazy for me. Some random dude filmed the Land Rover and slapped it online, with the caption, "Land Rover with a fish lost in the city." Within 30 minutes, it pulled over 100K views easily. The comment section literally blew up. People were dying of laughter, asking for the coordinates, trying to guess what city this was, demanding to know where this secret reservoir, packed with megaboss fish, was hiding. Some internet sleuths recognized the streets and started hitting up locals for the inside scoop. I was completely out of the loop on this, chillaxing back in my reservoir, sitting quietly while keeping an eye on the water, pondering road fixes and fish growth metrics. I had zero clue that 3 absolute NPCs in a Land Rover had accidentally dropped the most GOAT marketing campaign my tiny fishing hustle could ever dream of, and it didn't cost me a single penny. Now, I wasn't physically there for the next part, but Joe spilled all the tea to me later, and honestly, it was better than any binge-worthy Netflix show. So let me break it down, because this guy's life is a total circus, and I've got VIP front row seats right after rolling out of my village, with that fish dangling off the Land Rover, looking like the most cursed hood ornament ever. Those 3 drove straight to a local eatery. Around 8 p.m., Wangbin ordered enough grub to feed a small army, and told the kitchen crew to chop the head off their trophy catch and turn it into a massive, spicy fish head specialty. When it came out, that thing was so insanely huge, they had to serve it in an actual iron cauldron. Every single person in that restaurant froze dead in their tracks and stared. One bold customer sprinted to the counter and demanded the exact same meal. The owner just shook his head and clutched his face, saying, "That fish isn't on our official menu. Those weirdos brought it in themselves." I can only vibe with how gutted that guy felt. They ate, they drank, and flexed about every second of the epic brawl. With that beast, Joe was having the absolute time of his life. But somewhere between his second cold one and his third cheers, he checked his phone and spotted something terrifying. His wife hadn't sent a single ping since way back in the afternoon. 0 texts, no calls, 0 voicemails, absolute ghosting. Total radio silence from a woman who normally spams him with furious calls if he's even 5 minutes tardy. This wasn't chill vibes. This was the eerie silence right before the volcano blows, wipes the whole village clean off the map. Joe pondered it for roughly 4 seconds flat, then stared down at the steaming fish head, just shrugged and kept eating. Future problems are tomorrow's vibe. Tonight belongs to the seafood feast. Post-dinner, he grabbed the leftover tail section, hopped in a cab back home, and pushed through his front door into pitch-black darkness. An empty pad, 0 sign of his wife. Bro literally let out a massive sigh of relief. Maybe she dipped to her parents' place. Maybe she finally cooled her jets. Maybe tonight he could actually get some uninterrupted sleep. He tossed the fish tail straight into the kitchen sink, took a quick shower while humming a little tune, and walked over to his dedicated fishing gear room to get his setup dialed in for tomorrow. He was already cooking up plans for the next trip. More folks tagging along, heavy-duty rods, thick lines, absolute unit fish. Tomorrow is going to be insanely epic. He shoved the door open, and his grin vanished on sight. Every single fishing rod he owned was scattered across the floor. Trashed, not just casually dropped, totally wrecked. Snapped right down the middle, every single one of them. His high-end 600 yuan hardshell rod case had been brutally stabbed to death with scissors. His carefully organized line rigs were shredded into confetti. Brand new. Unopened bait packets had been dumped straight into the trash. And the absolute crown jewel of his lineup, a 6,000 yuan premium Japanese rod, his ultimate pride and joy, was snapped into 3 pieces like a cheap breadstick. Joe's knees buckled out, and he dropped to the floor, picking up the shattered fragments of his beloved rod, running his trembling fingers over the jagged edges. Eyes welling up with tears, everything was completely ruined. His wife hadn't stayed quiet because she calmed down at all. She'd been silent because she was too busy running a full-scale massacre. The heartbreak lasted about 10 seconds flat before pure, unfiltered rage took over, and he snatched his phone to call her. She picked up on the second ring, with a tone sharp enough to cut diamonds. She reminded him she told him so. He loved posting online about changing his last name to Fish. Well, now his rods matched his personality, completely broken and useless. Joe lost his mind, screaming about the Japanese rod costing 6,000 yuan. She fired right back that he could easily drop 6,000 on a stupid stick to catch fish. Yet when their daughter asked for a dance class, he claimed the family budget was way too tight. That statement hit him like a freight train. His jaw dropped, and his mouth opened and closed repeatedly. But not a single word came out. She totally cornered him, and she knew it. Then the front door clicked open. His wife strolled in wearing a deadpan stone face. And right behind her stepped in a man who made Joe's blood run cold instantly, dropping his temperature by 15 degrees. His father-in-law, Chun Guichong, the retired construction boss, built like an absolute tank with a fierce crew cut. The kind of guy who doesn't even have to raise his voice, because his resting glare alone makes people confess to things they haven't even done. Yet, Joe's wife coldly announced that her dad had driven over, primarily because he caught wind of the fishing over actual employment drama. Joe low-key started drafting his last will. She went off on a full-blown prosecution. Exhibit A last week. He claimed he was pulling overtime at the office, but some random person spotted him night fishing a local pay pond. Exhibit B, the week before. He swore up and down he was at a client dinner, but he was actually chilling by a country river with a rod. Exhibit C, last month's 3-day business trip, was really a 3-day fishing marathon. Every single alibi totally debunked. Joe just stared at his snapped rod and stayed silent. Because deadass, everything she dropped was straight facts. She threw out the ultimate ultimatum. Choose the fish or this family. Pick wrong. And we're heading to the divorce lawyer tomorrow morning. The room went dead silent after an awkward pause. Joe muttered the only weak defense he had left. You still shouldn't have smashed my rods. Not exactly a winning argument, Chief. Just when it looked like Joe's marriage was about to join his rods. In the shadow realm, the father-in-law stood up. He told his daughter to get to the bedroom. He needed a private, man-to-man talk with Joe. She looked sus as hell, but complied. The bedroom door clicked shut. Joe braced himself for the scolding of a lifetime. This was the exact moment where the old man was going to rip him apart, demand he quit angling forever, and maybe physically rearrange his face. Instead, Chun Guichong moved super fast. He marched over to the kitchen entrance, peeped at the fishtails chilling in the sink, and his whole vibe completely shifted, like someone just flipped a light switch. His stern look melted away, his eyes lit right up. He leaned in close to Joe and whispered, literally whispering like a kid spilling secrets in class. That green carp, how many pounds was it? Where did you reel it in? Joe's brain completely short-circuited. His jaw hit the floor, staring at his father-in-law, the dude who supposedly rolled up to save a marriage, and suddenly realized the truth. The old man wasn't here to chew him out. He was low-key hunting for the fishing spot. When Joe spilled this part of the Lord me, I laughed so hard I nearly tumbled into my own reservoir. My customer base was about to pull up, with one terrifying new father-in-law, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. The fish were literally selling themselves. Joe's father-in-law turned out to be the ultimate plot twist of my entire fishing empire. The guy had been a secret angler for years. Years. and his own daughter had zero clue. While Joe was getting caught lacking every other week. Like a total amateur, this veteran construction boss had been sneaking off to fish without ever getting exposed. Not even once. Joe almost lost it when he found out. His father-in-law looked right at him with genuine disappointment. Not because he was out wetting a line, but dead-ass because he got caught red-handed. In the old man's eyes, that was the ultimate sin. The deal they struck was straight-up wild. Chen Guiqiang promised Joe he'd low-key handle the furious wife situation and cop a brand new rods. To cover everything, she totally smashed. All Joe had to do was roll with him to my reservoir. Joe threw out his hand, like they were sealing a major corporate merger. They literally shook on it right then and there. They spent 5 whole minutes rehearsing their lines for when the wife stepped back out, acting like Broadway actors prepping backstage. When Joe's wife finally rolled up, the execution was low-key flawless. The old man threw on his ultimate stern dad face and announced he'd just had a super deep heart-to-heart with Joe. Joe nodded along like a bobblehead doll and spat out his crafted apology speech with the raw energy of an Oscar acceptance speech. I messed up. I totally ghosted my family. Dad's wisdom completely rewired my brain. His wife was super sus about it, but her own pops was standing right there, looking dead serious, so what could she even do? She hit the hay, thinking the drama was over. The next morning, at 5:30 sharp, the father-in-law called Joe's phone on speakerphone, so the wife could clearly eavesdrop and bark commands like a ruthless drill sergeant. Get your butt up. I'm dragging you out today to teach you some actual accountability. No more messing around. Joe replied with maximum compliance. His wife was so touched, she packed his gear herself, handed him water bottles, and told him to listen to Daddy. Joe stepped out the front door, feeling like the luckiest scammer alive. He was about to go fishing, backed by his father-in-law's ultimate blessing, his wife's full-on encouragement, and fresh gear on the way. The dude genuinely turned a massive household crisis into a sweet fishing sponsorship. By 6 in the morning, cars were already stacking up along the road by my village. Wang Bing's Land Rover was right there. Those 2 minivan guys from yesterday showed up too, plus some random stranger in a sleek black sedan, and another white SUV. Man, let me tell you, word traveled fast after that viral Land Rover video. Cruising through town with a massive catch had totally done its job. I was dead asleep until those loud engines shook me awake. Then came the loud shout, "Boss, are we open for business?" I stumbled outside, all groggy, and started counting heads. 12 people, bro, 12. Just 2 days ago, I had literally 0 customers, and a bank account hitting rock bottom. Now I had a whole squad of avid anglers hanging out in my village at the crack of dawn, ready to throw their cash at me. Wangbin immediately hit me up about the road status. And hey, I totally kept my word on that one. Every single yuan from yesterday went straight toward hiring an excavator operator to clear out the landslide and level the worst spots. The path was still totally trashed, muddy, and full of rocks, crammed with potholes, but whips could actually get through. My bank account was totally fried, bruh, but the highway was unlocked. Now that's what we call a high-key major flex, or pure desperation. Honestly, same difference. The entire squad rolled up to the reservoir, and the drive was straight-up comedy. Wang Bing's Land Rover slid right through the sludge, like it was born for this. Meanwhile, the cheap minivan right behind it was bucking around like a wild mechanical bull, yet somehow never lost momentum. The driver, Lu Jun, popped his head out the window and flexed hard at the sedan trailing him. Wooling Hongguang mountain legend, baby, this dirt track is nothing. Meanwhile, that poor sedan was crawling along at a snail's pace. The driver was probably low-key crying inside every single time a rock scraped the bottom frame. When everybody finally parked near the dam and hopped out, the vibe was dead-ass exactly what I wanted. The reservoir was insanely huge. Morning fog blanketed the water like a cinematic shot. Mountains faded into the haze in the background. The surface was glass-level smooth, except for the occasional random ripple, where a fish broke through the top. Even these loud, chaotic fishermen shut up for a second, just soaking in. Then I whipped out my QR code board, and the magic kicked off, scanning one by one. My phone kept pinging with cash alerts, and my brain started ringing with something way better. System notification after system notification. Plus 100 times, plus 100 times, plus 100 times 12 new fishermen. A 12-time speed boost, stacked on top of the 100 I already had for myself. 13 times total, meaning every real-world day that rolls by. The fish in my reservoir grind through almost 4 years of growth. 4 years packed into 24 hours. Those tiny fish were turning into mid-size units. The mid-size units were evolving into absolute units. And the absolute units, man, I didn't even want to picture what those behemoths were turning into. Everyone scattered across the banks to claim their spots. Joe set up camp with his father-in-law, who moved with the stealthy efficiency of a pro, who had been low-key hiding this hobby for decades. Those two minivan bros were literally buzzing with pure hype. The fresh arrivals were staring around wide-eyed. And then there was Wong Bin. Aesthetic hyperconfident. And completely dead wrong Wong Bin. Yesterday's dub, I convinced him his heavy baiting meta strategy was the absolute cheat code to angling greatness. So today he rolled up fully prepped, hauling 2 massive tubs straight out of his Land Rover, filled to the brim with fermented corn and pellet sludge, enough to feed an entire livestock farm for a week. He grabbed a huge scoop, loaded up a mountain of chum, windmilled his arm, and chucked it deep into the water. The splash was absolutely insane. Then he ran it back again and again and again, like 15 or 16 massive throws back to back, until the entire water surface looked like someone had poured a tub of porridge right into it. Lu Yun, the guy driving the van, just stood back watching this absolute circus, with his jaw completely dropped. He turned to his bro and blurted out what was on everybody's mind. Is this dude trying to fish or farm livestock? Me? I just posted up on the dam, soaking it all in. 12 guys paying me to hyperlevel my fish. A low-key pro fisherman father-in-law joining the squad. And some guy treating my reservoir like an endless buffet for the local wildlife. And underneath all that chaos, hidden from everyone except yours truly, thousands of fish were speedrunning years of growth. In mere hours, my reservoir was finally thriving. And my bank account was too, barely. The veteran angler took one glance at Wong Bin's massive bait drop and ghosted like the place was biohazardous. They grabbed their gear and scattered to the furthest, into the reservoir, complaining that this maniac was going to stuff the fish so stuffed and full, they'd never touch a hook again. The only one who stayed close to Wong Bin was Joe. He planted himself 5 meters away, with the unshakable aura of a guy who's seen the light and refuses to back down. Wong Bin asked why he wasn't bouncing with the others. Joe put his rod together, looking all mysterious, and dropped. They just don't get the vision. But I do. I had zero clue what he was on about. But honestly, those two were meant for each other. Joe's father-in-law, Chung Guichang, picked a chill spot, way over on the western side of the reservoir, hidden in a shady little nook, with tall weeds and a sprawling tree overhead. I strolled over to check his vibe, and instantly realized this OG was built different. No clown behavior like Wong Bin. No loudmouth energy like Joe. He just rolled a few precise little dough balls, dropped them into the exact same spot, with absolute sniper precision, and started fishing. Like he'd been grinding this skill since the dawn of time. His hands moved like clockwork, smooth and optimized, with zero wasted motions. I nodded to myself. This guy was secretly a total menace. Decades of underground fishing experience, boiled down into silent, lethal efficiency. The morning mist cleared out and the reservoir fell quiet. 12 poles in the water, 12 dudes waiting. Birds chirping in the background. Serene and aesthetic. The kind of vibe that makes you forget your net worth just tanked back down to single digits because you blew yesterday's profits on a heavy-duty excavator. Then Wong Bin shattered the silence. Got one. He yanked his rod up and reeled in a fat crushing carp, weighing over a pound. He held it up like a championship belt and dropped his victory speech for the whole damn reservoir to hear. See that? Heavy bait attracts the brave fish. Every experienced fisherman within earshot wheeled around, with expressions caught dead in a mix of pure bewilderment and low-key rage. The absolute legend who dumped an entire swimming pool worth of feed straight into the water somehow reeled in a catch the Matrix was totally glitching. But then literally everyone started pulling in fish. Back-to-back carp right here. Crucian over there, bites popping off everywhere you look. The whole reservoir was completely lit, except something seriously weird went down. This one dude hauled up a white-striped fish that easily tipped the scales over a pound. Now white-striped fish are tiny little guys. They max out at 3 to 5 years old tops, and usually stay around a few ounces at most. A 1-pound white strip shouldn't even be a thing. It's like spotting a house cat. Built like an absolute golden retriever. The guy who caught it knew something felt super off. His neighbor ambled over and swore up and down. It had to be a completely different species. They started throwing hands over it right in front of me. My brain was connecting the dots at lightning speed. The system wasn't just casually buffing the fish sizes. It was entirely breaking past their natural limits. These fish weren't aging normally or kicking the bucket on schedule. They were straight up growing infinitely. As long as nothing took them out, they were just going to keep scaling up forever. This was god-tier information and also low-key terrifying. Intel that I could never ever let slip to a single soul. So I strolled over, stared dead at the impossible fish, and dropped with a completely straight face. That's obviously just a baby top-mouth culture. Totally normal stuff, guys. The guy who reeled it in instantly nodded along with me. Because I'm the main boss and bosses just know things. Crisis totally averted, science completely dodged. Bay secured. My second aunt rolled up around midday, accompanied by 2 other neighborhood aunties, trekking up the brand new road I funded. She scoped out the reservoir packed with fishermen, and her gossip radar instantly locked right onto me. She pulled me to the side and hissed in a low voice. "How much are these folks actually paying you?" I threw up 2 fingers, $200 a pop. I watched her eyes pop out of her skull, while her brain violently crunched the numbers. For the first time in forever, 200 times 12, that comes out to 24 yuan a day. Her voice cracked completely, loud enough for the whole squad of women to catch. They swarmed in like absolute bees to honey. One of them piped up, "My uncle grinds the fields all month long, and doesn't even pull in that much cash." Another one, and honestly this was my absolute favorite part, blurted out that everyone in the village used to label me a lazy bum, and a total failure for coming back home after college. But lo and behold, I was actually a certified genius who found the cheat code to riches. My second aunt's expression got super awkward at that point, probably because she was one of the loudest haters, calling me useless just a couple of days ago. I just flashed a polite smile and kept my mouth shut. Silent flexing and making bank is the ultimate revenge. Around noon, the blazing heat spiked and everyone's energy totally tanked. Some dudes completely abandoned their fishing rods and headed straight for the shade to chain smoke. I was low-key starting to think. The hype for the day was already dead. Then Lu Jun yelled out, "Absolute unit." Every single head whipped toward him. He was locked in with a wide stance on the shoreline, bear-hugging his massive 7-meter pole, while whatever was lurking underneath tried to straight up yank him into the reservoir. That rod was curved so hard it looked like a literal sea. His face was totally purple, and his boots were sliding across the dirt. The fishing line was making that wild, high-pitched screaming sound. That lets you know whatever's down there is pissed. And absolute chaos broke out on the spot. His buddy dropped his own gear and scrambled over in a panic. Everyone abandoned their stations immediately. Joe sprinted way ahead of the crowd and tried to grab the rod. Lu Jun swerved away, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Get your hands off my rod, this is my catch." Fair enough, the man had driven 2 hours out and waited all morning for this exact vibe. He wasn't sharing this with anyone. Wang Bin stood in the back, barking out commands like a head football coach. Someone yelled out to get a landing net ready right now. 40 minutes of an insane tug-of-war went down. Lu Jun's legs were shaking uncontrollably. His arms turned to absolute jelly, but he refused to let go. Then the water literally exploded, and a gigantic grass carp rolled right onto its side, its white belly flashing under the sun. His friend waded right in with a massive net, scooped its head, and together they dragged it onto the shore. I brought out the scale, freaking 56 pounds. Over a meter long, with scales the size of fingernails. Lu Jun was trembling so hard, he could barely hold his phone steady for photos. He crouched down next to his monster fish, grinning like someone who just hit the lottery jackpot, and dropped the absolute best words a fishing spot owner could ever hope to hear. Driving 2 hours out to this middle-of-nowhere spot was totally worth every second. Music to my broke, single-digit bank account ears. Joe just stood there staring down at Lu Jun's 56-pound grass carp, with the most salty, bitter face I've ever seen on a grown adult. "Only 56 pounds?" he mumbled under his breath. My fish from the other day was way bigger than this. His fish from the other day was the one that snapped his pole clean in half and swam away forever. But sure, keep flexing, Joe. Let's just count imaginary catches. Wang Bin gave him a friendly slap on the back and told him to drop the whole jealousy act. We still had an entire afternoon ahead of us. Right then, everyone's stomachs started rumbling at the exact same time, sounding like a chorus of angry felines. It was well past noon, and most of these dudes had consumed nothing, except 2 tiny steamed buns since sunrise. Wang Bin rubbed his stomach and asked, "If I serve actual food out here?" I looked around at my setup. A lone QR code stuck on a post. in a reservoir packed with mutant fish, and thought, yeah, duh, obviously. I've got a hidden 5-star Michelin restaurant behind that boulder. But instead of throwing shade back at him, I had a way better plan, so I called up my second aunt and asked if she could whip up lunch for 12 people. She totally locked in on the vibe, scoring fresh grub right at home. Organic veggies straight from the plot. Legit farmhouse, cooking nailed it. While waiting around, my brain was dead-ass spinning. Crowds were going to keep rolling in, always needing food. I couldn't just have my auntie hiking up a mountain, clutching bamboo baskets every single day. I scoped out that flat, empty spot right next to the reservoir, and the master plan literally formed itself. A shelter, some tables. A low-key pop-up farmhouse eatery. Catch fish in the morning, devour it by noon. Fish in the afternoon, total one-stop service. Every decent fishing spot I'd ever heard of came with lunch, and mine was going to match. Second aunt rolled up right around 1 o'clock, slaying it with 2 massive baskets on a shoulder pole. 12 grown men posted up on flat rocks, using bigger boulders as makeshift tables, and absolutely eating her food up like they hadn't touched a meal in a week. Maybe it was pure hunger. Maybe city folks just go wild for anything. Cooked in a rustic farmhouse kitchen. Either way, they were simping for a hard. I slid her 240 yuan, steady 20 per head, and her face lit up way brighter than any fish glow. She was beaming, bagging more cash from one lunch cook than my uncle makes grinding fields for days. The afternoon sun was beating down hard, and the fish decided to quit cooperating. Everyone got lazy, rods barely twitching. The guys were half comatose in their chairs. The hype felt totally drained. I was low-key thinking. The peak of the day was already history. Then, right at 3:40 sharp in the afternoon, the quietest dude at the reservoir finally broke the silence. For the very first time, Chen Guiqiang, Zhou's low-profile, stealth fisherman father-in-law, had been chilling in his hidden corner all day long. Like a stone statue, zero drama. No shouting at all. Just packing patience, so thick you could spread it on toast. His entire body suddenly jerked forward. His right hand locked like a vice onto the rod grip, and he let out a roar that bounced across the open water. His massive, 8-meter heavy rod bent into a terrifying semicircle. The fishing line made a deep, menacing hum. Not the high-pitched whine of some basic catch, but a low, angry vibration, signaling that an absolute unit was hooked on the other side. What happened right after was easily the sickest thing I've ever witnessed. Any human pull off with a fishing pole. The old-timer didn't panic, didn't pop up from his seat. No screaming or flailing around like a noob. He stayed glued to his chair looking like a total Zen master, reading every single twitch of the fish, straight through the vibrations in his palms. Whenever the beast charged straight for the middle of the reservoir, he let his rod tip flow right along, easing up the pressure so smoothly. He looked like he was conducting a whole symphony orchestra. The exact second the fish lost momentum, he reeled back hard, stealing away its energy step by stubborn step. The whole display low-key looked like pure Tai Chi, totally effortless and smooth. Totally in the zone. Zhou stood right beside his father-in-law, looking completely shook. Wangbin leaned in and whispered low, "What on earth is your father-in-law's backstory? This move is honestly next-level pro." Zhou just shook his head, looking defeated. "I have literally zero clue. And he's literally my father-in-law." Every single angler there was watching in dead silence. This random retired construction boss they'd never heard of was putting on an absolute clinic. An hour ticked by, then another half hour. The intense showdown had already dragged past 90 minutes. I stood close enough to catch the sweat streaming down the old man's forehead, and his arm muscles shaking from pure burnout. He was running on fumes. Yet his face gave away nothing but pure focus. When the monster finally broke the surface, the entire reservoir went dead quiet. A dark back pierced right through the water. A massive black carp, way larger than Lu Jun's grass carp. Just the visible part of its frame was as thick as a kid's waist. Someone behind me low-key said a prayer. The beast whipped its massive tail around, slapped the surface hard, and the splash blasted right into the faces of folks on the bank, before diving back down into the depths. Though it was fading fast, now moving sluggishly, lingering near the top, running out of steam. Wangbin was pacing right behind us, acting like an anxious dad in a hospital waiting room. Zhou crouched down beside the old-timer and softly offered to take over the pole. Chen Guiqiang didn't even bother turning around. He just snapped a single word, "Get lost." Zhou backed off immediately. Nobody messes with that kind of vibe. 10 minutes later, the giant surfaced once more, exposing its entire body above the waterline. It was insanely huge. People started throwing out wild guesses. 1.5 meters na way bigger than that. That thing is easily bigger than my coffee table. It plunged down one more time, darting sideways across the line for a good 10 meters. The old man finally got to his feet, readjusted his stance, matched the angle, soaked up the sideways pull, and kept right on reeling. Zero wasted motion, not a single sloppy twitch. It was like watching a master surgeon at work. At 5 o'clock, sharp, the fish popped up for the 4th round. And this time it was game over. The massive green carp rolled flat onto its side, white belly facing straight up at the sky, its mouth opening and closing in slow, exhausted gasps while its tail barely fluttered. Wang Biyun and Lu Jun charged right into the shallows. Biyun grabbed it by the jaw. Lu Jun swept the net cleanly around its head. The creature threw one final violent thrash that nearly wiped Biyun out completely, but the net held strong as they hauled it onto the bank. Like two guys wrestling a massive fallen tree log, I pulled out my digital scale, and Wang Bin gave me a hand lifting the net as the needle spun around in a blur, lagged for a second, and then went completely dead. 81 pounds. 12 anglers formed a tight circle, locked in absolute shock at this absolute unit. Crickets could be heard for several seconds. Then the atmosphere completely blew up with roaring hype, mind-blown swearing and pure disbelief. Phones flashing out from literally every pocket. Meanwhile, I was low-key crunching totally different numbers. 13 times growth speed. Fish bypassing natural limits like it's nothing. A father-in-law reeling them in like an absolute final boss. Right here in a reservoir. That was turning into the most legendary fishing hotspot in the whole region, dropping absolute monsters one by one. 81 pounds today. Bro, what's it going to be next week? That 81-pounder hit the crowd like an absolute nuke. Grown men were literally losing their minds. Lu Jun squatted down next to his own 56-pound grass carp, held his arm right against the old man's catch for a size check, and looked deeply offended on a spiritual level. 25 pounds heavier than mine? How is the fish meta this insanely unfair, bro? Welcome to my private reservoir, homie, where the actual laws of physics just take a vacation. Chun Gui-chong wiped the heavy sweat off his forehead with his sleeve, slapped his cap back on, and flexed a grin, like an absolute Sigma who finally proved a point. He'd been low-key waiting years to prove. Joe sprinted over and put him a tight bear hug. Dad, you're an absolute legend. No cap. I'm calling you Chin 81 from this day forward. The old man literally shoved him away. Don't stick me with weird nicknames when your name is Joe. 100 pounds. Once I haul in a 200-pounder, then we can talk, kid. Joe, being absolute peak Joe, immediately went okay. Future Chin 200. But what if you end up catching exactly 250 pounds? What am I supposed to call you then? Because in Chinese slang, 250 literally means an absolute clown. The old man's foot connected straight with Joe's ribs before the guy could even finish his sentence. The hilarious yelp that echoed across my reservoir wasn't even human. The golden sunset painted the water pure orange, and it was time to cash out and settle scores. I pulled out my ledger and digital scale and started rolling down the line person by person. Almost everyone managed to score a catch today. Crucian carp, common carp, white striped minnows, around 80 pounds of smaller fish total. Grand total. Buying them back at 2 yuan per pound would cost me roughly 160 bucks. But practically nobody took the buyback offer. At 2 yuan a pound, they'd rather cook and eat the fish themselves than take that insulting payout, Lu Jun joked. Selling his trophy fish back for 2 yuan would be a literal crime against his own personal aura. He was dragging that thing straight to a restaurant to throw a massive feast. The real bag, though, came from the heavy hitters. Lu Yunis Mesiwakaskop. 36 pounds over the 20-pound limit multiplied by 20 yuan equals 720. Chun Guichang's absolute monster green carp. 61 pounds over the threshold times 20 makes 1,220. Both payouts cleared instantly without a flinch. I snapped my notebook shut and crunched the final stats. Fishing admission fees, 2,400. Big fish trophy fees, 1,940. Minus the minor buyback payouts of 160. Net profit, a clean 4,180 yuan made in just one single day. 3 days ago, I was literally surviving on bland, plain boiled noodles because I couldn't even afford a single egg. 3 days ago, my bank account was totally broke, like barely double digits. Now I was pulling in a solid $4,000 a day. The road repair yesterday ran me over $1,000 bucks, but today's bag covered that and way more. My ultimate flex of marrying a baddie. And making it to the top was actually happening. Still totally wild and sketchy. But we're locked in walking back down the mountain. Joe slithered up to his father-in-law, rocking his absolute gremlin grin. Yo, Dad, let's flex this giant fish on the Land Rover. And cruise downtown like yesterday was insane. Everybody and their mom was taking pictures. The old man gave him a look, like he'd just suggested setting himself on fire. Bro, are you trying to get me killed? Your wife called. While you were busy wrestling that fish yesterday. If some random snaps a pic of you with this thing, and it goes viral online and she sees it, then what? Keep your head down, stay low-key. Be invisible, hide your massive WS. Joe instantly deflated like a popped balloon. But Wong Bing was lurking nearby, and his eyes literally lit up like Christmas. Wait, you don't want to flex it? Bet, sell it to me right now. I'll add 500 on top. The old man locked that deal instantly. Cash was secured, and once again, this squad of dudes strapped an absolute unit of a fish to the back of a Land Rover, with zero hesitation. Today's catch was dead-ass bigger than yesterday's. The tail was literally dragging on the concrete. Wong Bing gave a proud little pat, told everyone to speed it up because it was getting dark fast, and peeled out toward the county town. An hour and a half later, Wong Bing's Land Rover rolled straight into the city streets. For the second night straight. This time, everybody spotted it right away. Pedestrians were pointing and screaming. No way, the legendary fish is back. People on the sidewalk sprinted after it. Other drivers were honking like crazy. Wong Bing had the windows down, arm hanging out the door, music bumping, cruising from one end of the city to the other. Like an absolute main character, a couple cars started tailing him. Not even mad, just super curious. Other fishermen dying to know where these cracked fish were actually spawning from at some random intersection. The pursuers finally trapped him in, and completely swarmed the ride, same exact routine as yesterday. Handing out cigs, throwing compliments, begging for the exact coordinates. Wong Bing was eating up all that clout, adding every single person on WeChat, promising to link up tomorrow. He was low-key building me an army of buyers, and absolutely loving every second of the grind. Then a cop car rolled up out of nowhere. Two officers spotted the massive cluster of cars and people, and assumed a full-blown street brawl was about to pop off. They marched over with deadpan, serious faces. Wong Bing's hype vanished instantly. Was hanging a colossal fish off your whip actually illegal? He had totally Googled it after yesterday, and was pretty sure it was totally fine. But standing face-to-face with actual cops, being pretty sure suddenly didn't feel like enough. What's going down here? The cop rolled up and asked. The dude looked like he was barely 20, while Wong Bing, old enough to be his dad, awkwardly called him uncle. The young officer did a double take, uncle. He was literally half Wong Bing's age, yet he kept his cool like a pro, and started investigating the whole mess. The onlookers quickly stepped in, saying they were just curious about the giant fish. The cop walked around to the back of the whip, and laid eyes on the massive green carp. Even he was low-key shook to his core. An 81-pound beast dangling off a luxury ride, right in the middle of a busy street, is definitely not in the police academy textbook. Wong Bing dropped the ultimate question. Officer, is cruising around with a fish hanging off my car legal? The cop gave a slow nod, not technically illegal. Birse. Though that but hung heavy in the air for a hot minute. But your fish is completely blocking your license plate. Traffic Safety Law Article 95, my friend. That's a 200 yuan fine and 9 points on your license. Sign right here and get this obstruction out of here ASAP. Wong Bing's brain literally lagged. He glanced back at his car. And sure enough, that fish was an absolute unit, totally obscuring most of the numbers. Yesterday's catch was smaller and tied up higher. Today's trophy was dead-ass, dodging every traffic camera in the entire city, before Wong Bing could even process the impending doom of his driving record. His nephew, Wang Buyun, swooped in like a main character in an anime. Officer, I was the one driving. Just write the ticket under my name. Everyone standing around turned to look at this kid, willingly taking a fine and 9 penalty points for his uncle. The crowd was honestly blown away. What Sigma grind set, what absolute loyalty. What peak family values, what nobody mentioned though, was that Wang Buyun actually works for Wong Bing. So eating a traffic ticket for the boss comes with the territory. The kid wasn't being a saint out of pure goodness. He was just protecting his bag. Still, it looked legendary, and honestly in this day and age, looking good for the camera is half the game. That night, I was chilling at crib, slurping down my depressing bowl of instant noodles, when I opened TikTok and nearly choked on my dinner. The absolute first thing on my FYP was Wong Bing's Land Rover. creeping through the streets with an 81-pound giant, strapped to the back, looking like the most unhinged aesthetic flex ever. The clip was already pulling in over 1 million views. Crazy numbers, with tens of thousands of likes pouring in. And every single person in the comment section was spamming the exact same question. Where on earth is this spot? Some of these comments had me laughing so hard I spat out my broth. Some random netizen did the math and figured out. Wang Buyin traded 9 license points for a fish, worth roughly 1,000 yuan, which sounds like a terrible trade offer. Except those 9 points also farmed him millions of impressions online. So is this actually a 300 IQ investment all along? Someone else joked that this fish must have been living for decades and never pictured its golden years. Kicking off inside a luxury SUV, traversing rush hour traffic while another user dropped. That Land Rover should low-key sponsor the fish as their main influencer. Though my absolute Roman Empire was this one guy who literally drafted an entire lore about bumping into an old man by a lake, who swore he once pulled out a bicycle, gear by gear, before begging for the exact coordinates, because he seriously needed a ride. Man, the internet is a wild, toxic wasteland, and I dropped my chopsticks to go full-on tryhard. I spun up a brand new burner account named Ding Family Bay Reservoir and started carpet bombing every viral comment section with my exact location copy-paste reply on loop until my fingertips went numb. My inbox literally blew up to 99 plus notifications in seconds. Some folks hit me up asking if this was legit. Others flamed me as a total scammer using unhinged vocabulary. Some actually connected the dots that my handle matched the Reservoir and realized I was the main boss. And a few absolute Chad swore they were pulling up tomorrow. Dinner was a total loss. That bowl of carbs literally turned into concrete. While I sat there, grinding away at stranger DMs past 1 a.m., by the time my bladder forced me to step away, I had been grinding my marketing campaign for 4 straight hours, running on 0 food, hydration, or bathroom breaks. I jammed the cold noodle brick down my throat, brushed my teeth, and face planted in a bed with my mind racing a mile a minute. That video was organic clout on a scale I couldn't have bought even with a lifetime's worth of savings. Yet my setup was an absolute ghost town. 0 shade from the brutal sun, no seating areas, no esnaksak, no restaurants. Literally just raw water, some fish, and a QR code taped to a random stick. If 20 people actually rolled up tomorrow, where are they supposed to eat? Where are they going to sit? I couldn't bub my second aunt every single day to haul bamboo baskets up a treacherous mountain trail. Scaling this required cash, and I was sitting on a grand total of 4,000 bucks. I passed out, stressing over financial roadblocks I couldn't fix. 5 hours later, someone was absolutely battering my front door. At 6:30 in the morning, Joe's unmistakable voice pierced my eardrums like an alarm drill. Bro, the sun is already roasting your lazy, but I swear this dude's sole mission in the universe is to make sure I never sleep past sunrise. I dragged my corpse toward the entrance, swung it open, and instantly snapped wide awake. There were whips parked everywhere. Over 10 vehicles jammed tightly along the narrow village lane, and at least 20-something randoms hanging out, vaping and chatting. Some were yesterday's regulars. Most were complete strangers who saw the viral clip, tracked down my comments, and actually drove out here at dawn on a weekday, no less, to fish at a random spot they've never set foot in, run by a guy they've never met, in a town so off-grid it barely exists on Google Maps. Skipped my morning hygiene routine entirely, no cap, hopped straight into Wang Bing's Land Rover, and led the whole fleet cruising up to the reservoir. The line of vehicles stretched so far back behind us, it deadass looked like a mini parade right by the dam. I whipped out my QR code, and the absolute symphony began. Scan after scan after scan. My phone went off with payment chimes, while my brain was vibing to something way better. 27 people in total, including yours truly. 27 times the speed boost. Just one single day now equaled roughly 4 years of fish growth. 4 whole years at this rate. Those fish weren't just getting chunky. They were evolving into ancient beasts. Straight out of a nature documentary. Wang Bin set up camp at his usual spot, and instantly unpacked his 2 buckets of fermented corn and pellet feed. Joe strolled past, spotted the buckets, and his face utterly collapsed into pure second-hand pain again. Slapping the bucket lid with ultimate swagger, Wang Bin boasted, "The facts are speaking for themselves. That 68-pound green carp totally bit right in my zone. Heavy bait attracts the brave fish." Joe tried to argue that the poor fish had just accidentally drifted through his territory and stepped on a hook by sheer accident, which has got to be the absolute weakest cope. In fishing history, Wong Bin completely left him on read and started launching bait into the water with his massive ladle splash after splash after splash, looking like a guy trying to fill an Olympic pool with oatmeal. A newcomer who had never witnessed this madness sneaked up to me and whispered low, "Boss, did you actually hire that dude to feed your fish?" I almost died laughing right there. I told him, "Nah. That's just how Wong Bin goes fishing." The guy shook his head, totally mind-blown. "You're so lucky to get a few more clients like him, and you won't even have to buy fish food ever again." He wasn't lying either. Wong Bin was simultaneously my MVP customer and my most elite free fish feeder. He literally paid me 200 yuan for the supreme privilege of dumping cost-free nutrients straight into my reservoir. Every single pellet he tossed made my fish fatter. Every chunkier fish reeled in more hungry anglers. Every fisherman who showed up accelerated the growth glitch even more. The whole ecosystem was feeding itself, literally and figuratively. And the guy funding it genuinely thought he was winning. 27 people on day 4 just 2 days ago. I only had 3. The video was still going viral everywhere. Notifications were still flooding my phone nonstop. Tomorrow was going to be even crazier, and the day after that. Even wilder, my cheap instant noodle. Single-digit bank balance days were officially over. Somewhere deep beneath that dark water, thousands of fish were leveling up at an absurd speed. And right up on the surface, my ridiculous little startup was blowing up. Just as fast, barely 30 minutes into the morning session. And fish were already biting like crazy everywhere you looked. Guys were shouting out left and right. Massive crushing carp and gleaming white strips, one after another. Then, some newbie reeled in a massive bitterling. That weighed a solid pound. A 1-pound bitterling, those things aren't supposed to get bigger than your thumb. The dude lifted it up, looking like he just pulled a mythical creature out of his tub. Another angler glanced over and told him it was actually a bream, not a bitterling. The first guy wasn't buying it. But let it slide. I walked over and confirmed it was definitely a bream, which it totally wasn't. It was a bitterling the size of a mini brick, and everybody moved on crisis averted. My system was pumping out these fish way past their natural expiration date, and I had to keep straight up lying about it, with a straight face for the rest of my hustle. Then, a guy power walked up to me with his legs glued together, an absolute panic on his face. "Boss, where's the restroom?" I pointed straight at the bushes behind the reservoir. He looked everywhere. At the 27 fishermen scattered around, checked out the bushes, made a life-altering choice, and bolted into the wilderness. Watching him vanish into the tall grass, I realized this was going to low-key backfire eventually. Today it was all guys and a bush got the job done, but someday a girl might show up, and I couldn't exactly toss her a leaf and point toward the hillside road shelter. Food, toilet. My build list was getting insanely long, and my bank account was sweating bullets. My phone buzzed. Before I could ring second in about lunch, it was my mom's sister calling. My Joma. She's the kind of person who doesn't ask how you are. So much as drop verbal atomic bombs on your soul. "Where are you? Your front door is locked. Are you ghost?" I pulled the phone away from my ear to save my eardrums, and told her I was at the reservoir, running a fishing empire. She hung up on me mid-sentence, and announced she was pulling up to hunt me down. No room for debate, zero negotiations. Just clicked 20 minutes later. She stormed up the mountain trail like a mini tornado. Rocking sandals, she froze dead in her tracks when she spotted 20-some people lined up along the shoreline, equipped with rods, tents, and umbrellas. Her hands slapped onto her hips, and her head spun around like an active security cam, scanning the whole scene. "What on earth have you built here?" I broke down the whole fishing biz for her. She demanded to know the price per head. I told her 200 for a day pass. I could literally watch her brain calculate the bag. Her eyes went wide like she just hit the lottery jackpot, pulling in grand totals daily just from admissions. Her entire vibe toward me flipped instantly. 5 minutes ago, she thought I was a total loser. Now I was an absolute business legend. What basic math can do to family dynamics. She let it slip. My mom sent her over just to check if I was feeding myself right. Wholesome vibes, terrible timing though. And then she dropped the ultimate question. Were these guys even eating for lunch? I started to say I'd hit up second aunt again, and she straight up lost her mind on me. "Second aunt? Your uncle is literally a pro chef. He was cooking at a major city hotel for over a decade. The spot shut down, and he's just been couch rotting, glued to the TV and playing cards for 6 months straight. How did you not call him? I just stood there blinking. She was totally spitting facts. How did I sleep on Uncle? The guy can actually throw down in the kitchen. Not some basic home-cooked stuff, either. Legit upscale restaurant-tier cooking. I dialed him instantly, and he picked up, sounding super defeated. With the quietest voice you could possibly imagine. The vibe check between him and his wife was like comparing a quiet hum to a loud air horn. I asked if he could pull up and cook for 30 people and grab the groceries on his way here. He gave a quiet yeah. Then my aunt snatched my phone and yelled right into the mic. Grab extra meat. These dudes look completely starved. Save the receipt, and Hal will Venmo you back later. A quick beat of dead silence on the line. Then a tiny got it click. The household hierarchy couldn't have been more obvious, even if she was rocking an actual crown. Meanwhile, Wang Bing was grilling Joe about the one thing everyone was dying to know. How on earth did he shake his wife this morning? Joe smirked like a fox who just raided the henhouse. His father-in-law had rolled back home and convinced Joe's wife that Joe's attitude was top tier, and he was showing real remorse, and that today, the old man was taking him out to network with some high-level business connections to level up his career, and his wife totally bought the whole story. She basically packed his bags and waved him off happily. Wang Bing's jaw hit the floor. Your father-in-law isn't even a family member at this point. He's a certified undercover secret agent. Joe puffed up his chest with pride. That right there is what you call a dynamic duo. When we team up, we are literally unstoppable. Wang Bing paused for a second and asked, what happens if you both get caught red-handed? At the exact same time, Joe's grin vanished instantly. Don't you dare jinx it, man. Right on cue. 9 more whips came rumbling up the dirt trail. 2 cars pulled up, and 5 fresh people hopped out, loaded down with full fishing gear. The guy in the lead was pretty young, maybe early 20s, rocking a branded fishing jersey, with polarized shades clipped right on his cap. He jogged over toward the dam, spotted me, and walked up with his eyes wide open in pure hype. Excuse me, is this the legendary Ding Family Bay Reservoir? Those 7 words were literally the sweetest sound I'd heard. All week long, absolute total strangers pulling up. People who had zero clue who Wang Bing or Joe were, who had no ties to my hometown whatsoever, who just stumbled on a viral video of a fish on a whip and drove for hours just to make it here. The internet totally did its thing. My reply comments low-key did their job, and literally everyone who stepped through that invisible portal made my fish level up faster, made my reservoir way more legendary, and made my tragic instant ramen days feel light years away. 32 players and counting. This reservoir was officially cooking. 5 new players spawned in, flexing that they drove 3 hours after seeing the clip. 3 hours for a fishing spot. They clutched from a comment section at 1 a.m. I'm obsessed with the internet, I told them. The fish here are massive, no cap. But I'm making 0 promises about anyone actually catching the loot. They didn't even care, scanning my QR code so fast. I barely had a second to hold it steady. 32 fishermen now, 32. 100 times speed, my reservoir was aging like fine wine. Roughly 9 years per day underwater. At this rate, the fish down, they were probably forming. Strong hot takes on politics around noon. My uncle pulled up on a sketchy electric trike, loaded down with pots, pans, veggies, and enough raw meat to feed an entire server. The dude looked nothing like a pro chef. Skinny, sun-baked. Rough hands that screamed NPC farmer, who wandered off-path toward the wrong fields. But this guy spent 10 solid years grinding behind a hotel stove before the spot got shut down. And now he'd been rotting at home for half a year, binge-watching daytime TV, while my aunt slowly drove him out of his mind. I dropped a 6,000 yuan offer, a month for him to come cook at the reservoir full-time. He started stammering that it was way too generous, which is the exact kind of humble cap my aunt was never going to let slide. Before the poor man could even finish his sentence, she completely bulldozed him. 6,000 is fine. Your nephew is being an absolute G. Say thank you. My uncle glanced at her, glanced at me, and quietly went back to setting up his outdoor stove setup. The man has clearly unlocked the meta of survival through pure silence. I made a mental note to never, ever marry someone built like my aunt. I'd rather fist fight an 80-pound mutant fish barehanded. Every single day, my aunt and I went to rinse veggies at a mountain spring tucked deeper in the reservoir zone. She hauled a basin of meat. I carried a basin of greens, and she ran her mouth the entire trek about how I needed to upgrade the infrastructure ASAP. Aprupe kishin real dining tablas. Shade from the sun. She wasn't even lying about any of it. The place was essentially an aesthetic lake, surrounded by pure wilderness and main character energy, with literally zero facilities. Nodov, no vazrom. No kitchen, absolutely nothing. Just a random QR code and pure ambition. While we were scrubbing greens in the freezing cold. Spring water, I heard loud shouting echoing from the fishing dock. Multiple voices completely clashing at once. The unmistakable vibe that something massive was going down. On someone's hook. I popped up and glanced toward the reservoir. Sure enough, some dude had his pole bent, pretty much in half while a whole crowd gathered around him. That guy was Lee Howen, a Gen Z local, who had binged the Land Rover fish vid like 20 times. Couldn't catch any zizzers before midnight, and slid into my DMs at 1 in the morning. Not expecting squat, I actually hit him back, since I was also wide awake at 1 a.m. Spamming comments like an absolute menace, and he deadass couldn't believe a real person answered. He was low-key, suspecting it might be a scam, but the temptation was just too busts in. Ditched his house at 3 a.m. and drove nearly 3 hours, pulling up to my village. Right on time to join the morning squad. His first few hours were straight trash. Nothing was biting, while everyone around him was hauling in catches. While his bobber just sat there completely dead, looking like a tiny plastic figurine. He started low-key stressing if he picked a cursed spot. The sun was straight up roasting him, his eyes were heavy, and he was seconds away from passing out cold. Sitting upright after staying awake for over 20 hours straight. Then his rod almost got yanked right out of his grip. Something massive choked down his bait, and tried a speed run, leaving the country with it. Lee Howen screamed it's go time, and held on for dear life with all his might. The rod curved so insanely hard. The tip was practically kissing the water. The screaming of the fishing, line slicing across the reservoir, sounded like a mad hornet the size of a dog. 2 nearby anglers dropped their own poles and bolted over to spectate. Here's the main plot twist. Lee Howen's personal best was a measly 8-pound carp. This absolute unit on his line felt like at least 50 pounds. The massive gap between what he was used to and whatever monster was trying to drag him into the lake was pretty much the difference between riding a bicycle and piloting a spaceship. He had zero clue what to do. The fish dashed left. He wrenched right hard with every single fiber of his being, which was completely the wrong move. The backseat drivers around him lost their minds. Stop pulling so hard, let it run. Your drag is way too tight. Chase after the fish. Half a dozen random fishing experts were all yelling totally opposite directions. An exhausted young dude, fighting for his actual survival against an underwater freight train. He was freaking out so badly. He totally blanked on what hand was supposed to do what. The fish abruptly switched paths. Lee Howen's feet couldn't keep up the pace. He slipped, his upper body plunged forward, and he instinctively bear-hugged the rod, like it was a floating piece of debris at that exact second. The fish pulled off one explosive dash, straight toward the middle of the reservoir. Snap, the line shattered clean in half. Lee Howen slumped down onto the dirt, staring blankly at his dead rod, while reality slowly processed what just went down. 2 seconds of dead silence, followed by a whole symphony of heavy sighs. The joint disappointment of 30 anglers, breathing out at the exact same second, probably messed with the local weather patterns. Wong Bin shouted from his spot that there were plenty of fish left in the sea, and at least the rod didn't snap. Lu Jun strolled over and patted Howen on the shoulder, with the most toxic reassurance I've ever witnessed. Don't sweat it, bro. That fish was probably only like 30 or 40 pounds anyway. Not even a big flex. Another dude decided to twist the knife even deeper. FR man with an actual massive catch. You wouldn't even be able to lift the rod at all. So technically yours was mid-AF. Lee Howen stared up at both of them from the ground, with completely dead eyes, and mumbled, "Thanks guys, but could you seriously stop comforting me? Every single word is making it worse." The crowd finally scattered, and everyone went back to their stations. The reservoir went dead silent again, and somewhere down in the deep water, a fish with a broken piece of line still stuck in its mouth was swimming away completely clueless that it had just absolutely ruined some kid's entire week and handed out free premium content to 30 spectators who were going to meme about this for years. I glanced over at the 3 tubs of veggies we just washed and did a quick mental calculation. 27 starving dudes baking in the sun since dawn versus a pathetic pile of greens that wouldn't even fill up a medium-sized bunny. Something had to change fast. Otherwise, lunch was going to turn into a riot. Any of this food is nowhere near enough. I'm going to go grab some fish. She just waved me off. Without even looking up from scrubbing the meat, go ahead. Hurry up, man. Your uncle already got the stove fired up. I jogged over to Wong Bin's fishing spot. The man was straight up cooking all morning. His fish keeper was literally overflowing with catches, making enough noise to sound like a war zone inside. I tossed him a cigarette and asked to borrow a couple of fish for lunch. He didn't even bother taking the smoke, just waved both hands covered in bait paste in the air, and told me to take whatever I wanted. I pulled out 2 chunky crucian carp and a thick bream, dropped the net back into the drink, and turned to head back. That's when Joe let out a massive scream 5 meters behind me. Oh, holy crap. It's here his rod was curved into a complete rainbow. The line was singing against the water so intensely. It sounded like a high-voltage power wire. People came sprinting from all directions. Even Xing Wuchang put down his rod at his secret spot and moseyed on over, with the chill energy of a retired boss, watching noobs fumble through the tutorial level. Keep it steady, you're not in a tug-of-war tournament. The old guy barked at Joe, who was pulling back so hard. The veins on his neck were literally bulging. When it dives, you gotta let it dive. Loosen up the drag by half a turn. Keep moving with it. Don't just stand there locked in place. Joe totally had a grip on all of this. No cap, he's a veteran fisherman. If literally any random person tried barking orders at him, he would have told them straight up where to shove their 2 cents. But when your father-in-law starts preaching, you just nod and take the L. That's just the vibe of life. I stood right there lugging 3 lifeless fish, peeping this chaotic showdown go down with peak hype. The tension on that fishing line was no joke. Definitely another absolute unit, maybe even record-breaking. My brain was already crunching the numbers on how much this dub would juice today's bag, right before my daydream got violently checked. Yo, where those damn fish at? Did you literally dolphin dive in to grab them with your bare hands? Stop wasting time, bro. My aunt's voice blasted across the whole reservoir, like a sonic boom, making 2 random ducks that were just chilling by the shoreline freak out and scatter instantly. I'm low-key convinced anglers on the opposite bank felt a mini tremor. I pulled my head into my hoodie like a turtle and dashed back to the makeshift kitchen setup. Some boss fights are just unwinnable. My uncle was already locked in on the makeshift stove, whipping a massive iron ladle through popping oil. The guy spent a solid decade flexing as head chef at the county's biggest hotel. He could practically solo a 60-table wedding feast. With just 2 sidekicks today, he looked kind of stressed. Though honestly, just because. Our cooking station was a patch of dirt under a tree, featuring a chopped-up piece of scrap wood. Perched on a couple of rocks, it wasn't about lack of talent. It was a total lack of literally everything else. He snatched my catch without dropping a word, bashed them against the stone slab, and flipped 3 full, breathing creatures into pristine fillets. In under 2 minutes, flat scales wiped out, gills cleared, insides gutted. Quick rinse done, his hands moved like they had a mind of their own. Then he pointed at a chunk of pork and told me to slice it. My blade skills are nothing too crazy, but I can hack meat into chunks. That looks somewhat identical, if nobody's staring too hard. The opening dish hit the hot wok, and that scent cut across the reservoir like a weapon. Blazing hot oil, garlic, ginger, a generous spoonful of chili bean paste, pork sizzling and popping away. A certified countryside stir-fry masterpiece. The kind of aroma that makes grown men ditch their fishing rods and start shuffling toward it, like absolute zombies locked on a frequency. Wong Bin was the first one to fold. He was staring down his float when his nose started twitching like crazy. He glanced over at Joe, who was still locked in a death match with his catch, and went, "Yo, do you smell that?" Joe was in zero shape to chat about food, so Wong Bin just followed his nose straight to our cooking station and just stood there, staring at my uncle cook like it was a whole cooking show on TV. He kept throwing out low-key compliments and hyping up the technique. Bro literally switched from fishing fanatic to hardcore food critic in like 30 seconds flat, right at 12:30. I hollered lunch and the whole reservoir cleared out, faster than when someone drops a bag of free cash. Every single angler except Joe and his father-in-law, who were still throwing hands over that fish, came sprinting toward the grub. My uncle had whipped up a massive feast of stir-fried pork, veggies, and the absolute main event, braised bream served in a giant iron pot. Over 20 starving dudes swarmed it, like locusts descending on a wheat field. The reviews were straight up elite. This spot has god-tier fishing and god-tier food. I'm never leaving. This slaps way harder than actual restaurants. Some guy joked about setting up camp here forever. And that's when my aunt stepped up and flexed to anyone within earshot that obviously the food was fire. because her hubby used to be head chef at some fancy-ass hotel. So cooking basic farm grub was child's play for a guy of his status. She was literally flexing her man to a bunch of absolute strangers who didn't even ask, beaming with pure, unadulterated pride, looking like a little kid, showing off their favorite toy at school show and tell. The whole crowd lost it laughing, while my uncle just kept washing dishes and totally ghosted the situation, pretending he heard nothing. Every single crumb of food was completely annihilated. 3 massive basins licked cleaner than a whistle. The remaining sauce dumped straight into rice bowls. Not even a single drop of broth survived. These dudes ate like they had a personal beef with the food existing. Right after lunch, I started mapping out the expansion. Those fishermen had straight up begged me to stock bottled water and cig for sale because 2 guys completely ran out of vapes or smokes during the morning session and spent the entire lunch break desperately begging strangers for a cigarette hookup, which was genuinely down bad to witness. I needed a proper kitchen, a mini convenience store, and at least a couple of decent restrooms as bare minimums. So I hollered at Grandpa Shang, my go-to village muscle man, and asked about sourcing some solid wood beams for construction. He told me freshly chopped timber wouldn't cut it, but he had over 10 seasoned beams stashed at his crib and could check with other locals, since country folks always hoard extra lumber just in case. It's an old habit from back in the day when you could just chop trees off your own mountain without filling out 17 annoying government permits. He said he'd swing by to check out the property and help me figure out the game plan. Things were moving insanely fast, like literally 4 days ago. I had 0 clients, 0 bag, and 0 hope. Now I was pulling up with a pro chef on payroll, mapping out building projects, and running a booming fishing enterprise that was literally bending space-time down there at 30 times speed. No wait, 200 times speed, 9 whole years of fish growth in just 1 real day. Those fish were evolving faster than my entire business strategy. And honestly, my business strategy was scaling up way faster than I could even comprehend. Right on cue, Grandpa Shang rolled up with a couple of other village elders to scope out the construction site. These guys are all technically my grandfathers by village hierarchy, even though they're only middle-aged. Rural family trees are a special kind of madness. One shared ancestor 300 years ago, and suddenly, every 40-year-old man outranks me by 2 generations. They watched the fishermen for a while, with genuine confusion on their faces. The concept of paying money to sit by water and wait for something to maybe happen was completely alien to them. But when I told them what I was pulling in daily, the confusion turned into respect real fast. We mapped out where the building should go: kitchen shop, resting area, and figured we'd need about 60 beams. Luckily, rural families hoard dried timber, like squirrels hoard nuts. Between a few households, we had enough. I booked the excavator guy to come flatten the ground. Tomorrow my reservoir was getting infrastructure, actual walls and a roof, not just a QR code taped to a prayer. Right as we finished planning, the reservoir erupted. Joe's fish, the one he'd been wrestling since 11 in the morning, finally surrendered 3 solid hours of fighting. The thing surfaced in a massive explosion of white water, belly up, completely finished. Joe looked equally finished. The man was running on pure stubbornness and fumes. We all rushed over Wong Bui when kicked off his shoes, waded in with the giant net, and we hauled this beast ashore together. It was a green carp, almost as impressive as his father-in-law's 81-pounder. From yesterday, I slapped on the scale 72 pounds. No record broken. You could feel the collective disappointment. Everyone wanted to see what the ceiling was in this reservoir, but Joe wasn't disappointed at all. He threw his head back and laughed, like a man who just won the lottery. See, I told you, Joe. 100 pounds is the real deal. Wong Bing stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You do know 72 is not 100, right? That's 28 pounds short. Did your math teacher give up on you? Joe didn't even hesitate. You round 7 up and it becomes 10. So 72 rounds up to 100 basic math. The entire reservoir went silent for one beautiful second, and then absolutely exploded with laughter. Someone yelled that, by Joe's logic, a 5-pound fish rounds up to 10. Another guy said, fishermen's mouths are the hardest substance known to science. Joe stood there grinning, completely unbothered, soaking in the chaos he'd created. Then he pulled out his phone to post on social media. 3 photos, a caption about being the real 100 pounds, and a hand shot out of nowhere and blocked his screen. His father-in-law materialized behind him, with a look on her face screaming, "You better think twice before you click post, bestie. You trying to survive this household, or get yourself one to live, dad? It's literally just a random social media post. Bro, last time you flexed online, your wife literally smashed every single fishing rod you own and almost dragged you into divorce court. Joe started sweating bullets in absolute panic right then and there. He shoved that phone back into his pocket, way quicker than he pulled it out. Wong Bin was dead-ass dying of laughter. I low-key missed the old, fearless Joe FR. Joe dropped a heavy-sign, man, y'all just don't get my struggle. Ever since around 2:30 hit, this reservoir went completely off the rails. A massive 41-pound grass carp popped off on the east side. The poor guy reeling it in was literally getting dragged across the shoreline, looking like an absolute NPC. On a leash, then a 54-pound green carp on the west side, followed by a 58-pound big head. Then another 62-pound absolute unit half an hour later. 4 absolute monsters in just 2 hours. Nobody managed to smash Chin Gichiang's record. But honestly, nobody even cared anymore. This wasn't just a chill fishing spot. It was straight up a literal factory printing out massive fish on demand. These dudes were secretly upgrading to longer rods behind each other's backs and switching to thicker fishing lines. Every single person had the exact same wild thought locked in their head. Who's going to be the main character to finally break the 100-pound mark? I just stood up high on the dam, watching them upgrade their gear in real time like a pro gamer, while calculating what was secretly going down beneath the murky water, operating at a 3,200 times speed boost. With every single hour that flew by, these aquatic beasts gained months of biological growth. That legendary 100-pounder they were all daydreaming about wasn't just a pipe dream, it was basically locked in destiny. And every single angler chasing that clout was accidentally pumping up the fish stats just by showing up here as the sun went down. I tallied up the final loot 27 full-day tickets at $200 a pop, plus $5,405 worth of big fish bought to take home, including Joe's 72-pounder alongside the 41, the 54, the 58, and the 62, bringing the subtotal to 30. 740 minus roughly 100 for small fish buybacks, bringing today's grand total to a massive 9,000 yuan, bro, 9,000. I stared hard at my phone screen, having to pinch myself, realizing this was actually happening just a week ago. I was literally rationing cheap instant ramen. A week ago, local neighborhood aunties were clowning on me, calling my college degree a total waste of time. And now I was pulling in more cash in a single lazy afternoon than my pops grinds out in a whole month at his factory job. My overhead costs were basically non-existent. Fish literally level up for free when time manipulation does the heavy lifting. My profit margins were practically my entire gross revenue, minus a few packs of noodles and an excavator rental fee. Right as everyone was packing up their gear, Joe tried to gas up Wong Bin into buying his fish and rolling out for another clout-chasing city tour. Wong Bin totally hesitated. Yesterday's brutal 9-point traffic ticket was still haunting him. But before he could completely shut down the idea, a whole squad of other fishermen swarmed the area, flexing their own massive catches and begging to get in on the trend. This whole strap of fish to your car meta was turning into an actual tradition, and my business hadn't even been live for a full week yet. 9,000 yuan secured in my bag. Construction starts bright and early tomorrow. A pro chef on the payroll. Anglers already locked in for a comeback tour. And deep down in the murky depths, beasts were evolving, making today's massive catches look like tiny snacks. The big question was just how insane things could get before something genuinely wild went down. And honestly, with my cheat code system, shattering every rule in the biology textbook, total chaos felt like it was basically arriving right now. These guys simply couldn't resist. One buddy pointed out that yesterday's ticket was only because the catch blocked the license plate view. As feeks. Hang the monster fish on the side instead of the trunk. Issue resolved. Wong Bing's hesitation lasted about 4 seconds flat, before he slapped his knee and shouted out loud, "Let's run it," buying Joe's 72-pounder right on the spot. And suddenly 5 rides had 5 massive beasts strapped to their doors, flexing like the world's most extra car mods. Wong Bing double checked his plates 3 times, confirmed they were totally clear, and dropped the command. Roll out, the sun is still up and the streets are waiting. 5 whips cruised out of my reservoir in single file. I watched them vanish down the dirt path, like a tactical squad except packing dead fish. An infinite main character energy instead of weapons. Right after they dipped, 5 out-of-towners pulled up asking to pitch camp by the lake overnight. They had crushed a 5-hour drive to get here, and weren't about to turn back empty-handed. I laid down the law. Find tent, stay at least 10 meters off the water. Pack out your trash. And don't go getting yourselves killed, they swore they were pros. I had paying customers literally sleeping next to my fish farm. And the system never sleeps on the grind. Those 5 dudes would be stacking time speed boosts all through the night, while sawing logs in their tents. Vibe check walking home alongside my uncle and aunt. Locals kept stopping me to chat it up. Those exact clowns who called me a total scrub last week were now praising me as way smarter than my old man. Some old geezer who had been talking trash behind my back just days prior grabbed my arm, claiming I was destined for absolute greatness. I just flashed a polite smile and kept quiet. Because what do you even say to someone who switches up sides faster than Joe flips his excuses? Still, I had actual business to run. The construction zone by the reservoir sat on a patch of mountain real estate belonging to my granduncle, my grandpa's brother, who we all just call Gong. He's an old school guy, living solo in a traditional timber cabin, the type of legend who measures net worth in corn stalks. In absolute peace, I spotted him sitting on his porch step, shucking corn in the dusk light. I pitched the idea that I needed a corner of his property to throw up some rooms for the fishery setup. He didn't even look up from his husk, didn't ask for dimensions, and didn't ask for cash. Didn't push back with a single condition. Just dropped the line. You're doing good things with that reservoir, kid. Take whatever you need, period, done deal. I hung out with him for a bit and lent a hand peeling some corn, because that felt like the only legitimate way to say massive thanks to a guy who didn't want a thing. My aunt made dead sure my uncle knew. He was dragging himself up at 5:30 tomorrow to grab groceries. She dropped this news at a decibel level that probably woke up the next town over. My uncle just muttered bet, in a tone so low it could have easily been an inner thought he accidentally let slip. They rolled out on the 3-wheeler, leaving me chilling solo in my yard, feeling like my life was finally locking into place for the first time in months. Then my phone went off with an alert that literally made my stomach drop. 5 whips hauling fish through downtown streets, getting completely curved by the cops. I clicked that link so fast, I nearly smashed my screen. Here's the tea. While I was out here husking corn with an old-timer, that 5-car fish convoy pulled up in the county seat, right during rush hour. Wong Bing spearheaded the squad in his Land Rover, with the bass cranked up to absolute brain-rattling levels. His nephew was riding shotgun, capturing every single cinematic angle. They crept down to 20 clicks an hour and cruised through the main drags, in flawless sync like a presidential motorcade. Except the VIPs were literally giant fish. The internet went wild, pulling 10 times the cloud of last night's stunt. 5 cars, 5 massive catches, rolling back-to-back through packed sidewalks, while fishtails slapped in the wind. People were literally sprinting after the convoy on foot, and a food delivery guy on a scooter paced right beside them. 4 3-hole blocks filming with one hand, almost wiping out on a trash bin and keeping the camera rolling. A mom pointed at the cars and told her kid, "Look, fish," and the kid blanked for 2 seconds before asking, "Mommy, did those fish break the law? Are they getting locked up?" Man, I wish I was there, just to hear that kid's reaction. They crept right past the shopping strip, where the crowds were going crazy. Every single pedestrian froze. Every phone came flying out. Wong Bing was feeling like the main character of the universe. They looped from the east side to the west side and back again, completely drunk on clout. Total dopamine junkies addicted to the spotlight on lap 3. Past the shopping district. An old dude walking his dog watched them roll by, gave him a long, deadpan stare, then pulled out a vintage flip phone and made a quick call. 2 minutes later, just as the convoy pulled up to the intersection, for the 4th time, a squad car was parked dead sideways across the tarmac. Emergency lights flashing, blocking the whole street. Wong Bing slammed on the brakes, and before anyone could even think about throwing it in reverse, a second police cruiser flashed in his rearview mirror, cutting off all escape routes, completely cornered. 5 cars, 5 fish. Zero context, just me staring down my phone screen out in the pitch black yard, bro. Still having instant noodle broth grease all over my fingers, low-key wild. Just scrolling through and watching this whole absolute circus play out live on the web. These absolute mad lads had actually turned my fish reservoir spots into some unhinged nightly street parade. And now, the whole squad convoy was completely boxed in by the feds, dead in the middle of a public road, with what felt like half the town's population already pulling out their phones. My absolute first thought was low-key hyped about the free cloud. My second thought was stressing if any of these clowns ratted out my reservoir's actual name to the cops. My third thought was that I seriously needed to knock out and sleep Because tomorrow was going to be even crazier than today. And whatever went down with Wang Bing and his ridiculous fish circus was totally, hilariously, wonderfully out of my hands. Wang Bing and his goofy fish circus got absolute instant karma. 6 police officers swarmed 5 cars right in the downtown shopping district, like it was a full-blown hostage crisis. Except the hostages were already dead as hell, and weighed anywhere from 40 to 72 pounds apiece. Wang Bing immediately dropped his top-tier defense. "Officer, I swear, we didn't even cover up the license plates this time around." The cop could not care less about the plates. Turns out someone, probably that grumpy old dude with a flip phone and dog, phoned in a massive Karen complaint about 5 vehicles purposely crawling through city streets, completely ruining traffic flow. Produce. Dangling massive heavy objects off moving cars is apparently a major safety hazard. Who would have thought a 72-pound fish swinging from a car door could potentially smoke a random pedestrian? I mean, besides anyone with basic common sense. Bro, the blame shifting inside those whips was an absolute movie. Lu Jun, the down-for-anything minivan driver, was screaming at the top of his lungs that he knew trailing Wang Bing was a massive mistake, while his homie clapped back, reminding him nobody forced him. "You totally forced me. You said, let's hang a fish and lock in with Wang's pure happiness." The guys in the white SUV were pointing fingers at each other so fast. They looked like they were in an underground rap battle. "You're the one who suggested the convoy." "No. You're the one who suggested hanging dead fish on the sides." Just 5 grown-ass men, completely devolving into kindergarten-level finger-pointing, while the police officers watched with deadpan, exhausted faces. They all got escorted straight down to the traffic precinct, with 5 vehicles parked in a neat row right in the lot, each whip decked out with a gigantic dead fish. The on-duty cops rushed outside real quick, like little kids hearing the ice cream truck pull up. One rookie officer low-key sneak-snapped a pic of the whole lineup, while another walked right up to the wooling and guessed the grass carp weighed around 40 pounds. The fisherman instinctively corrected him, 41, then instantly realized he was standing inside a police station, actively arguing about fish weight. The human brain acts so glitchy under high pressure. During Wang Bing's official interrogation, the officer straight up asked how many times they'd pulled this stunt. Wang Bing nervously confessed, twice. The cop flipped a page on his notepad and clapped back. Yesterday it was just 1 car. Just 1 single fish today. 5 cars carrying 5 fish. Tomorrow it's 10 cars. Next week we'll probably have a whole parade with marching bands. Wang Bing swore on his entire life that there wouldn't be a next time. I believe him about as much as I believe Joe when he claims he's quitting fishing for good. Meanwhile, I was chilling at home, watching the whole situation blow up all over the internet. That video of 5 fishmobiles getting pulled over went viral in literally seconds. The comment section was pure gold. Someone wrote, "That photo of the traffic cop parking lot with 5 fish lined up needs to win the National Fishing Photo of the Year award." Another person ran the numbers and figured out my reservoir must have pumped out at least 7 fish, weighing over 50 pounds in just 3 days, and straight up asked if the place was cursed. Some guy living over 1,000 kilometers away in another province dropped a screenshot of his GPS and announced he had already taken 3 days off work. Someone else fired back with their own navigation screenshot and typed "See you at the finish line," while a comedian suggested the cops should seriously set up a ticketing booth right by my reservoir. Catch your fish. Pay your fine. Total one-stop shop. I did what any grind-set business owner would do. I opened every single trending clip and spammed my address all over the comments. Copy and paste. On repeat. My DMs blew past 99 unread notifications in under 10 minutes. Some folks were asking about the fishing conditions. Some wanted directions. And others were curious about camping spots. Wang Bing's traffic tickets turned out to be the ultimate marketing flex in angling history, and it literally cost me $0. The next morning I got woken up by some loud banging on the door again. I opened it, and my brain needed an instant hard reboot. That narrow village road was jam-packed with over a dozen vehicles, featuring license plates from at least 4 or 5 different states: Sichuan, Hunan, Guangdong. Hubei people had driven through the entire night. From hundreds of kilometers away, one massive dude with a heavy local accent yelled that he'd been driving since midnight and demanded I open up for business right now. Wang Bing and Joe were nowhere to be found. Probably busy dealing with the fallout from their illegal fish parade, or hiding from their wives, or honestly both. Whatever, I had way more customers than ever before. I splashed some freezing water onto my face, ditched everything else, and led the whole convoy straight up to the reservoir. 53 people scanned my QR code that morning. 53 distinct system pop-ups, ringing in my head like a submachine gun. 5,300 times speed multiplier. One actual day in the real world now equaled 14 and a half years of aquatic growth down below. 14 years those fish weren't even just growing anymore. They were literally speed-running evolution on a cosmic level. Today's crowd included something I'd low-key never peeped at my reservoir before. 3 female anglers out in the fishing scene. Chicks who genuinely drop a line are way rarer than those 100-pound absolute units. Everybody is out here hunting for one of them rocked a ponytail. Pro gear worth a bag and legs. That had every single guy within a 50-meter radius suddenly locking in and becoming super invested in whatever angle she was facing. I look too, I'm running a reservoir business. Not trying to be a monk by 10 o'clock. The whole spot was absolute pandemonium. The excavator was going beast mode on the dirt patch, right next to the water, carving out the blueprint for my future empire. Grandpa Shang and a couple village elders were dragging massive timber beams over to the work zone. My uncle rolled up in his clapped-out 3-wheeler, stuffed with produce, and enough pork meat to feed a whole fraternity house. He took one glance at the massive 50-plus crowd and told me there was 0% chance he could feed this many folks by himself. I had to hit up second aunt to come pitch in. For 100 yuan a day. She'd say bet before I even finished my sentence. Everything was going down all at once building. Cooking fishing cash flow. Big catches coming in, people beefing over bait spots. Newbies asking where to set up while the heavy machinery was shaking the ground. My tiny, middle-of-nowhere water spot that nobody wanted to touch 2 weeks ago was turning into a complete circus. Loud, understaffed, and totally lacking basic setups like bathrooms and shade. But legit. 53 people dropping 200 each meant over 10,000 yuan. Straight off the ticket sales. Plus whatever extra bag I'd make from selling massive fish. I was cooking up a literal empire out of magical time skips, internet clout, and Wong Bin's insane gift for getting locked up by the cops. Everything was completely dialed in. Excavator roaring timber, getting stacked high. 53 anglers throwing bags of cash at me, like I was a magical fountain, when suddenly a voice cut through the noise. Way louder than the industrial engine. Cut the digging, stop right this second. The excavator operator slammed on the brakes so hard, the whole rig shook violently. He popped his head out looking totally clueless. I swung around and spotted second aunt, stomping down the muddy trail, acting like she was on a top-secret wrath mission. She marched right up to the front of the excavator, threw her arms out wide, and locked herself dead in its path, like she was out here pulling a literal tank man stunt in Tiananmen Square. Except instead of fighting for freedom, she was throwing hands over a cut of my bag. I strolled over trying to keep my vibe chill. Second aunt, what's the tea? She slammed both fists on her waist. The universal power stance of a woman, about to completely ruin your day, and drop the opening blow you're building on this dirt. Did I ever greenlight this? My brain totally short-circuited. I literally swung by great uncle's place last night. The old-timer told me I could use whatever I wanted. My 2 uncles backed me up that the property was registered under his name. Everything was locked in. How did just 8 hours of shut-eye turn a solid deal into a total hostage situation? I kept my cool and explained that my great-uncle gave me the green light himself. She hit me with the frostiest laugh I've ever heard from any blood relative. Him agreeing is his own damn business. He doesn't speak for me. And he sure as hell doesn't run this family anymore. That line dropped like an absolute flashbang. Every single fisherman within earshot froze in their tracks. Grandpa Siam, along with 2 other village elders, dropped their timber and hurried over looking super stressed. Grandpa Shang tried to talk some sense into my second aunt. Look here, fishing business is a massive W for the whole village. Why are you trying to start drama? That was like dumping gasoline straight onto a bonfire. She straight up imploded a W for the village. A W for who? Look at all these normies here. 200 yuan a pop, he's pulling in thousands daily. And what do we get? Literally 0. Now he's trying to grab mountain land for free. Where does he get the audacity? And boom, right, there was the real motive. It had 0 to do with land boundaries or family hierarchy. She was just salty. Pure un adulterante toxic jealousy. Barely a week ago, she was roasting me for being a broke college grad who couldn't even catch a fish. Now, I was making more cash in a single day Then her hubby brings home in a month. It was driving her insane. She couldn't stand seeing someone else win. Without getting a bag out of it, classic rural politics. The second you start glowing up, the blood relatives come knocking. Not to say congrats, but to collect their dues. The other elders tried to chill her out, but she was past reasoning with. She just kept getting louder and more toxic, ramping herself up to the point where I low-key expected her to throw herself onto the dirt and start thrashing around like a full-blown toddler having a tantrum. 50-something local fishermen were standing by watching this soap opera live in real time. My family drama became the ultimate afternoon entertainment, and admission was completely free of charge. Everyone assumed I was going to either blow a fuse or fold immediately and hand her some cash. I did neither. I turned straight to Grandpa Shang, using the calmest tone I could muster, and dropped a single question. Grandpa Shang, where exactly is the property line between my great-uncle's land and second aunt's family property? Second aunt's jaw dropped, and she instantly went quiet. That wasn't in her script. Grandpa Shang pointed toward a warped pine tree, roughly 50 meters out. From that bent tree over there all the way across this side, straight up to the peak of the mountain. That's all your great-uncle's land. He mentioned your great-uncle, dropping heavy emphasis, making it loud and clear that second aunt, merely married into the family, had zero legal rights to anything from day one. I dialed great-uncle, and he picked up, sighing like a dude who's seen way too much drama and is completely over the BS, muttering that he was too old to deal with this mess. He told me to talk to my uncle's translation. Second aunt got to him first. She low-key bullied an old man into backing down overnight. Talk about wholesome family values, I called second uncle. He whispered into the phone like an inmate, making a contraband call. Look, this is really your second aunt's call. I literally can't get involved. His own wife had him so shook. He couldn't even back up his own nephew over the phone. I called big uncle, and he was way more blunt. Just handle her yourself, bro. I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. Not a single soul wanted to be the one to check second aunt. She had the entire bloodline completely domesticated. 3 phone calls and 3 total fold-ups. Second aunt's ego was so high up in the clouds. She could practically pick up Wi-Fi signals with it. She was 100% convinced I was about to come crawling back, slip her some cash, and cut her into the venture. Somehow, she had her entire Karen speech loaded up and ready, prepared to bleed every last yuan she could. Out of my desperation, I just pocketed my phone, refused to look at her, and didn't drop a single word. Instead, I pointed across the reservoir toward a wild, bushy slope on the opposite side. Grandpa Shang, whose empty lot is that over there? Second aunt's expression totally froze. This was definitely not according to her script. Grandpa Shang looked where I was gesturing and broke into the biggest grin I'd seen all week. That's my wasteland. Use it however you see fit. I nodded back. It's a solid plot. Let me buy it off you fair and square. Grandpa Shang cut me off right away. Why bother? It's just a bunch of weeds on a useless hill. Nobody's touched that dirt in 2 whole decades. You're out here grinding for real, building something that actually matters. Don't insult me by talking about money. Just take the land. I turned to the excavator operator and yelled out. Turn around, we're moving across the water. The heavy machine roared to life, swung its tracks around, and started rolling toward the other bank. Just like that, no debate. No negotiation. And zero satisfaction handed to second aunt. I completely ghosted her out of the equation. You want to play gatekeeper and block my hustle? Fine. I'll build my own road without your permission. The local fishermen had been spectating the whole show, while second aunt stood there stunned, watching all her leverage completely vanish. The crowd started whispering classic country drama. Your own blood will always try to snake you first, the moment you start winning. Haters literally can't stand seeing you succeed. Honestly, kid handled that like a boss. I would have totally lost my cool on her 10 minutes ago. The noise wasn't deafening, but it definitely hit different. Second aunt's complexion shifted from pale white to beet red and then a gnarly shade of purple that I've seriously never witnessed on any living soul. She showed up here trying to shake me down for cash, and instead got completely ratioed in front of 50 random bystanders. She turned on her heel without dropping a single word and ghosted down the dirt trail, looking like a total L. Grandpa Shang gave my shoulder a reassuring pat. Don't sweat it, kid. Your great-uncle sees right through all this nonsense. He just doesn't want the drama at his age. Just let her throw her toddler fits. I told him I genuinely respected what he just pulled off, and I wouldn't forget it, but he just waved me off, dropped the small talk, and get back to the grind, so I locked in. Because those fish don't care about family beef. And neither does the bag, those second ants. Meltdown actually sparked a low-key logistical headache. I hadn't even factored in. I was low-key planning to hire her to prep food for my uncle. But after she tried to hold my entire construction gig, hostage out of pure saltiness, that plan was dead in the water. I needed a backup plan right on the spot. Because 15 starving fishermen were about to go full savage mode on me. In roughly 2 hours, I hit up Grandpa Shang to see if his missus was available. He chuckled and dropped the line. All she does is feed 2 hogs and lounge around anyway. One quick phone call later, and she was heading up the hill, rocking an apron and ready to crush it. Crisis solved in literally 30 seconds flat. Second ant could have been bagging a solid 100 yuan a day, just chopping greens. But instead she chose to massively humiliate herself in front of half the region's angling community. Absolute big brain moves right there. While the excavator was roaring away on the new plot, on the opposite bank, I went on my routine stroll along the shoreline. What I stumbled upon completely fried my circuits. The catches were noticeably beefier than yesterday. Not just slightly bigger, but insanely massive. Yesterday's heavy carp averaged around 2 pounds or so. Today, every single unit pulled out of the depths started at 2.5 to 3 pounds easy. A 300-fold growth multiplier, equated to 14.5 years of aging in a single IRL day. These fish were leveling up so insanely fast that even I, the guy exploiting the system cheat codes, was getting low-key spooked. If this trend kept going without any caps, what on earth would these monsters look like in a month? I decided that was a problem for future me to stress over, and kept walking until I heard a woman shriek. Not a terrified scream, more like an epic battle cry. The ponytail girl had just hooked an absolute unit. Her fishing rod was warped into angles physics definitely didn't intend for it to bend, and the fishing line was slicing through the water, letting out that spine-chilling high-pitched screech. That only happens when whatever is on the other side is seriously heated about getting reeled in. Every single angler within sprinting distance instantly dropped everything they were doing and bolted straight toward her like absolute simps. But before any of them could even get close, she shut them down completely without bothering to look back. Back off, I got this under control. Those 5 grown dudes skidded to a dead stop and stood there, awkwardly with their hands shoved deep in their pockets, totally sidelined as NPCs. Her short-haired bestie squatted down right behind her, chill as heck while clutching a water bottle, acting totally unfazed like watching her girl throw hands. With a sea monster was just a regular Tuesday vibe. I crept in closer to study her technique. She was honestly cracked, nailing the timing on her pulls, and easing up on the tension at absolute peak moments. She wasn't just some newbie who accidentally hooked a heavyweight. She genuinely knew her stuff. Her arms were shaking like crazy, but she refused to yield an inch. The beast kept dragging her forward over and over, leaving long skid marks with her shoes in the dirt. Yet she just dug her heels in harder every single time. 40 minutes into this absolute war, the beast finally surfaced. The reservoir went dead silent for half a second flat, before erupting like a packed stadium. That massive black spine breaking the surface was insane. Clearly way larger than Shun Guichong's 81-pounder. From 2 days ago, no cap. Visibly, undeniably, terrifyingly bigger. People started screaming about hitting the 100-pound mark. History was about to be made, and everyone knew it. Those guys that got completely pied earlier suddenly conjured up the most wild excuses to jump in and help. Diomis, your arms are way too skinny for this. A 100-pound catch is too precious to blow. Let me take over. I promise I won't ask for anything in return. They weren't stressing over her safety at all anymore. They were straight up daydreaming about being the main character holding that rod. When that absolute unit hit the shore, every single one of them would have sold their soul just to trade spots with her. She ghosted all of them entirely like they were invisible. Then the monster pulled a dirty move, diving straight down into the depths with zero warning. A sudden, brutal plunge that sent its entire kinetic energy ripping down the line and straight up the rod, violently yanking her off her feet. She shrieked, and the next thing anybody witnessed was her whole body, face planting straight into the reservoir. Fishing rod and all, people scrambled toward the water. But her bestie was lightning fast, kicking off her kicks instantly, wading right in and grabbing the ponytail girl by the arm. Another random angler pitched in to haul her back to dry land since the water was only waist-high, meaning she was never in actual mortal danger, though she was thoroughly soaked to the bone. Her thin UV protection jacket plastered tightly to her physique. Like second skin. And look, I'm a 24-year-old dude with fully functioning vision. So, I'm just going to acknowledge that fact quietly and keep scrolling. The exact second she regained her footing on solid ground. She didn't even bother checking for injuries. Didn't squeeze the water out of her hair. And totally ghosted the folks who fished her out. Instead, she spun around and locked eyes with the water. The line was snapped, and the surface was glass. That massive 100-pound beast was officially gone, swimming away, living its best life down deep, and rocking a piece of her fishing line as a flex. She punted her shattered rod so aggressively. It went sliding across the rocks, and let loose a spicy word that sweet young ladies definitely shouldn't drop. The fisherman, who had been walking up with super sympathetic vibes, caught one glimpse of her death glare, and immediately pulled a 180. No one was trying to get caught in the blast zone of that rage. I peeped the whole scene from across the reservoir, as her buddy escorted her to the white SUV, so she could slip into some dry fits. Grandpa Shang strolled past me hauling a wooden beam, spotted me watching, and nudged my ribs with a grin. "You're 24, bro. Time to lock it down and find a wife." I pretended to zone out on my phone. While he kept rambling, "Your reservoir is low-key blowing up. Tons of girls are going to show up to fish, meaning you've got home turf advantage. You feel me?" I told him to just mind his timber and stop meddling in Gen Z affairs. He chuckled, saying everyone was young once, and kept walking while laughing. About 10 minutes later, the ponytail girl stepped out of her SUV wearing fresh black athleisure, grabbed a backup rod from her trunk, and marched right back toward the fishing spots. I figured, as the big boss, I should probably check on the customer, who literally took a dive into my merchandise. So I sauntered over and dropped a casual reminder about watching her step near the slick banks. She turned around and faced me up close, allowing me to actually study her features. Super pale complexion and sharp angular traits. The kind of face that's striking rather than soft. Undeniably gorgeous, but in a way that low-key signaled she could utterly destroy you in arm wrestling and wouldn't feel an ounce of remorse. Her facial expression was locked at a solid -40 degrees sub-zero. She stared right into my soul and blurted out, completely out of left field, "Don't get a big head too fast, Chief." I pointed at myself like, when was I acting cocky? She totally ignored the question and pivoted back, trudged over to her spot, and started rigging up her new rod. I stood there completely lost with zero clue what just happened. Peeping her back vanished down the shoreline. Like, what even was that? Did I mess up? Was she beefing with me, gunning for the fish, or holding a grudge against the laws of physics? I had literally zero idea, and my gut told me asking would only make things worse. Rides kept pulling up nonstop all morning, as if my spot was acting as a giant magnet for bored people, completely lacking common sense. 65 anglers posted up by midday, 6,500 times acceleration every 24 hours. My fish were aging like fine wine for 18 whole years. Down there in the murky depths, there were honestly fish older than my own grandparents in fish years, and they were just getting seasoned by the second. My uncle whipped up lunch, like he was trying to secure a Michelin star, out in the wild. The man completely flexed a decade of high-end hotel kitchen skills on a makeshift stove right beneath a tree. And these casual anglers, who usually survive on gas station snacks and cold rice balls during their trips, were absolutely losing their minds over some actual hot grub, cooked by someone who actually knows what flavor is. One guy told me the 200 yuan entry fee was totally worth it for the meal alone, while another claimed my uncle was totally wasting his talent, cooking out in the boonies, and needed to open a downtown spot ASAP. My uncle just wiped away his sweat and whispered to me on the low that if I didn't hook him up with a proper assistant by tomorrow, his arms were literally going to fall off. I promised Grandpa that Shang's wife would be locked in on permanent kitchen duty, starting tomorrow for 100 yuan a day. She had already proved her worth today, rinsing and chopping like an absolute beast. I spotted the ponytail girl chilling by herself, devouring her second bowl of rice in total silence. She gave off the intense vibe of someone refueling a fighter jet right in the middle of a mission. Whatever went down this morning, with that massive fish dragging her straight into the drink, clearly didn't mess with her appetite or her grind. The afternoon was supposed to be chill and uneventful. Warm sun, lazy fish, sleepy fishermen. That is how a normal reservoir usually rolls. Mine apparently didn't get the memo. The fish went completely unhinged right after lunch. Within 10 minutes, 3 fishing rods literally shattered. Not exaggerating, actual explosion. Snapped straight in half with shards. flying through the air like fragments. The first guy barely made it halfway through his victory flex before his 200 yuan budget rod cracked right at the second section and launched the top half straight into low Earth orbit before anyone could even process the comedy. Another rod snapped 50 meters down the bank. Then a third the shore sounded like an active fireworks show, except instead of celebrating, people were crying over their broken gear. An old-school regular puffing on a cigarette watched a newbie hunch over his smashed rod, looking like his whole world just ended, sauntered over, and dropped the most brutal piece of advice I have ever heard, kid. Any rod under 1,000 yuan is basically a chew toy for what is lurking down there. You're not even fishing, you are just making charity donations. Between 2 and 5 o'clock, the reservoir entered what I can only describe as absolute boss mode. A 56-pound grass carp surfaced first, followed by a 78-pound green carp. That took an hour and a half just to wear down. Then a 76-pound big head and 3 more 52. 60, 66. 6 absolute units over 50 pounds pulled in just one afternoon. Every single time, a monster breached. The whole shoreline literally turned into an absolute circus. Crowds swarming, phones out recording. People hollering out weights like wild auctioneers. The vibe was completely insane, though the one number on everyone's mind was 81. That was still the high score. Chun Wuchang's massive green carp from 2 days back, and nobody could touch it. The 78-pounder came dangerously close to breaking it. Someone joked that the beast just needed a few more years to cook, and they should circle back later. Someone else yelled out that whoever first shatters 100 pounds at this reservoir would get a full-on formal bow from him. Forehead flat on the dirt, sending everyone into laughter. Yet beneath the chuckles ran some serious tension. That 100-pound mark was turning into their white whale. Everybody wanted it. Everybody knew it was lurking down there. And with a 6,500 times growth multiplier, pumping away deep underwater, they were way more right than they could ever imagine. Right at 6 p.m., I started wrapping up the books. The ponytail girl strolled over carrying a totally empty fish keeper. She had spent the entire day catching tiny fish and threw every single one back. Didn't want a single penny of cash back. I opened my mouth to ask how her session went, and she cut me off before I could even drop a word. She yanked off her hat, fanning herself furiously, shot me a glare like I had personally disrespected her bloodline. And snap, boss. You just wait. I'm pulling up with reinforcement for payback. Then, she hopped in her SUV and peeled out in a cloud of dust. I just stood there doing mental math that had zero to do with numbers. Get payback on who? On me? What did I do? The fish dragged her straight into the deep end. That's beef strictly between her and the fish. I am literally just the guy holding the QR code scanner. Was she going to roll back up with an entire fishing battalion? Was she going to drain my whole reservoir? I honestly couldn't tell if I should low-key panic or feel flattered that my business had ticked someone off. Bad enough to start a fan war. I shook it off and finished crunching the numbers. 65 tickets at 200 a pop. That's 13,000 yuan in gate fees. 6 monster fish bought to take home. 4,800 total minus bait costs and my uncle's payroll. Net profit clearing over 15,000 yuan in a single day. Yet second aunt's little stunt from this morning planted a thought in my head I couldn't shake off. Stacking paper is easy when you've got a cheat code system. That completely breaks the laws of biology. Securing that bag, keeping the peace, and keeping the hustle alive for the long haul. That's the real grind in a village this tiny. If I'm the only one getting rich, people are going to come for my head, not just second aunt, literally everyone. The jealousy is going to stack up until someone pulls a move I can't just sidestep out of by packing up and moving to another plot of land. The smart play was crystal clear. Spread the wealth, hire locals for construction, catering, cleanup, and security. Give everyone a stake in protecting this turf. Instead of hating on it, make the reservoir's massive glow up. Feel like a total W for the whole village. That's how you build an empire that actually slaps. Right as the sun dipped low behind the ridge, 14 hardcore anglers stubbornly refused to bounce. They'd driven a solid 1,000 kilometers and hadn't reeled in anything flexing worth mentioning yet. So they begged me for after-hours fishing rights. Rocking headlamps, glowing in the dark bobbers. Life vest, the whole 9 yards. One dude even slid an extra 100 yuan per head my way. I gave the green light to the fishing, but hard passed on the extra cash. Good vibes are way more clutch than 14 extra bucks when you're grinding to build a reputation. The reservoir fell into a pitch-black silence. Bullfrogs croaking, starry skies popping off. 14 tiny headlamp beams cutting across the pitch-black water, while my 14x growth hack kept running wild through the night. As I hiked back home, running numbers in my head. 15,000 yuan secured today. Construction officielle underway. En ex-chef en parole. A salty ponytail girl plotting her villain-era revenge. An aquatic life, aging 18 years every single day. In water nobody else knew was straight-up magical. Not bad for a broke college grad. The entire village used a clown on as useless. 2 weeks ago, this reservoir was scaling up. Way faster than I could keep pace with. I desperately needed backup to handle daytime patrols, night shift crowd control, and general construction grind. Basically taking care of all the chaotic tasks that one sleep-deprived 24-year-old could no longer solo by himself. So I went door-knocking across the village, acting like a recruiter for the weirdest startup ever. A solid 3,000 yuan a month minimum base pay. In this sleepy village, that's heavy money. Some dudes grinding random gig jobs in the county. Don't even pull that much, so most folks jumped on it instantly. The real catch was tracking down people who could actually handle hard manual labor, since pretty much all the young blood fled to the big cities. Years ago, meaning. My hiring pool consisted mostly of older folks, with achy joints and very loud opinions. Once I got everyone squared away, I headed right back up to the water site, since those 14 night shift anglers were out there, for the very first time. And I really didn't need anyone wiping out on my watch. My uncle had chow waiting for me the moment I rolled in, while I was aggressively stuffing my face with rice. He casually dropped the bomb that my aunt wanted to run the little convenience store I was initially planning to build. At first, I thought it was super sus she didn't just ask me face to face, considering that woman hasn't known shyness a day in her life since the day she was born. Though honestly, even human volcanoes get low-key awkward sometimes. Still, it actually made total sense when you think about it. She clocked years working at a local supermarket and knew every trick to shelf stocking and inventory management. I gave her the green light without blinking twice. Post-dinner, I decided to make one final desperate flex at catching a fish in my very own reservoir. I set up my rod in a peaceful little corner, cast my line out, and waited and kept right on waiting for over 3 straight hours, while every single fisherman around me kept pulling up catch after catch, to the left and right, while my float just sat there completely dead silent, totally ghosting me with its stillness. Whatever unhinged curse keeps the owner from catching a single thing in his own waters was still popping off hard. I was ready to pack my bags and take the L as the absolute worst angler on my own turf, when someone nearby shrieked, like they were literally fighting for their life. Some night fisherman had hooked into a beast that was trying to yeet him straight into the reservoir, like a true horror movie antagonist, dragging some poor soul into the abyss. I bolted over and locked in a bear hug around his waist from behind. The two of us together still weren't enough to hold the line. Another dude totally ditched his rod and latched onto me from the back. 3 grown guys locked together like a human chain anchor, and whatever was on the other end of that setup was still styling on us. Every single headlamp on the bank flipped toward our direction. A dozen blinding beams zeroed in on the water. People were screaming out loud that this thing had to weigh over 100 pounds. Then the absolute unit breached, literally launched clear out of the water into the open air, where everyone could catch a clear vibe of it, right under those insane spotlights. It was a massive big-head carp the size of a motorboat. Its jaw was dropped so wide open, you could easily park a human head right inside. Its creepy eyes caught the headlight beam and flashed, like something straight out of a fever dream. It twisted midair with its massive body rolling over, then slammed back down into the surface, with enough impact to whip up a mini tsunami. The sheer shockwave of power shot up the fishing line, straight through the pole and snap. The rod shattered dead in half. All 3 of us went flying backward and crashed flat on our backs onto the muddy bank. Scattered like bowling pins, we just stared blankly at the sky, gasping for air while completely caked in muck, watching the final ripples fade across the dark water, where that monster had just vanished. Nobody dared to speak for a solid minute. Then someone swallowed so loud the whole shore heard it, and blurted out what we were all thinking. That thing was low-key at least 200 pounds. Some other guy called out 300, and nobody even laughed because, honestly, who could even front? That thing was literally the size of a mini fridge, with fins attached. I pulled up my system panel while rubbing my aching lower back. The mutation tab still showed 0 new updates, which was kind of relief. yet super unsettling at the exact same time. If that monstrosity wasn't a mutant, then it was just a regular normal fish that had been speedrunning growth at 6,500 times normal speed. Totally normal, right? After that wild encounter, 0 people could fall asleep. All 14 fishermen stayed planted on the shore, with their lines dipped in the water, and their eyes wide open, running purely on high-key adrenaline. In the absolute cloud of hooking that boss mob, I ditched any plans of going home and stayed put too. We just camped out there straight till 3 a.m. without scoring a single catch. Not even a minnow. The entire reservoir went totally dead. Right after that, giant showed up. Like every single creature down there was low-key ghosting the absolute apex predator that just flexed on the surface world, showing everybody how massive it had gotten. I finally dragged myself into an empty tent and crashed hard. My aunt's voice snapped me awake at the crack of dawn, cutting through my deep sleep like a chainsaw through warm butter. Out there, a whole mob of anglers had already rolled up and were losing their minds arguing about last night. That story got way more cooked than any fish overnight. By morning, it turned into a massive multi-100-pound river spirit that 3 grown men couldn't even handle. My 200-pound estimate had literally doubled overnight, thanks to the magic of the fisherman grapevine. But honestly, all that clout chasing was doing my marketing for me. People who'd never even heard of my reservoir were now totally obsessed with this mythical cryptid lake monster. And the only cheat code to find it was coughing up 200 yuan to me. My aunt pulled me to the side to talk about the shop setup. I told her 0 rent, but she insisted on dropping 1,000 a month. I stopped arguing back, because once my aunt locks in on something, that discussion is dead and buried. 1,000 yuan was basically pocket change anyway, compared to the bag I was pulling in now. Wang Bing and his nephew showed up too, which was wild, considering they swore to lock in on their grind for a few days. Turns out Wang Bu Yuan saw the monster fish gossip in their group chat while scrolling on the toilet this morning, and instantly dialed his uncle. Wang Bing canceled an actual corporate meeting, a legit one with real business partners, and speed ran his way straight here. These dudes would literally trash their entire careers for a tiny shot at a big catch. And honestly, I kind of respected that top-tier lack of priorities. I asked where Joe was, and Wang Bing just grinned. His father-in-law had to retreat home without his ride-or-die bodyguard, so Joe didn't even dare step outside. He was actually stuck at the office working. For once in his life, I pictured Joe sitting at his desk staring blankly at his monitor screen, thinking about nothing else except that 72-pound fish. He low-key rounded up to 100, and I genuinely felt bad for the guy. His wife had totally won this round, at least for now, by taking away his main accomplice. Without his undercover fishing buddy by his side, 100 pounds was just Joe, just a regular corporate NPC trapped indoors daydreaming about water. Wang been rolled up with his signature 2 buckets of bait. At this point, like clockwork, that guy and his buckets were basically a walking tourist attraction. Newbie fishermen would point fingers and ask questions, while the veterans would just facepalm and pack up to move to the exact opposite side of the reservoir. Wang Bing didn't even care, completely convinced. He had unlocked the cheat codes to fishing, and nothing, not basic logic, not brutal roasting, not even the actual laws of marine biology, was going to change his vibe. The build was moving at absolute light speed. Across the water, bricks rolled in, cement and sand pulled up right after. And it turned out the ground was pure bedrock underneath, meaning we could completely ghost the foundations and just stack it straight up. Give it 2 days, and I'd be flexing real walls. A legit roof. My fishing hustle was finally graduating from just a dude with a QR code, stuck standing in the mud, into something giving major business vibes. My aunt pulled up with my uncle's restock run. Only this time, the 3-wheeler was hauling way more than grub. She loaded it with bottled water, snacks, and the absolute masterclass move: cigarettes within 5 minutes flat. The night shift. Fishermen who'd been pulling an all-nighter came, stumbling over like literal zombies, magnetized by nicotine, totally exhausted, shaking, down bad for a smoke. And my aunt was just standing there, flipping packs for barely $1 over retail. Like an absolute convenience store savior sent from above. Watching her chop it up with customers using that massive, loud energy of hers, I realized she was a certified sales icon. Some folks are born to stare at a desk all day. My aunt was built specifically to hustle strangers, while screaming at the top of her lungs. By 10 a.m., we had over 80 fishermen locked in at 8,000x speed. I crunched the numbers and got a bit lightheaded. One single day equaled roughly 22 years of aquatic growth. The critters down in the deep end were aging, way faster than my business blueprint could keep pace with. I started low-key daydreaming about dropping massive fishing tourneys, pulling hundreds of people here all at once, pushing the multiplier into completely unhinged territory. The fantasy was honestly intoxicating. Then a familiar screech violently snapped me out of my daydream. You can't just walk through here. Who said you had rights to walk here? I didn't even need to peek. I recognized that voice. The way vets recognize incoming artillery fire. Second Ant was back in action. Posts up on the path alongside the reservoir. Dead ass blocking two fishermen who were just trying to hike over to their spots. These poor dudes stared at her like she was some unhinged bridge troll, demanding a VIP password like, ma'am, is this your personal highway? Worst question ever. She blew up like a firecracker, dropped straight into a volcano. Yes, it absolutely is. Everything from right here, straight up to the peak belongs to my bloodline. Her voice literally cracked on the final word from pure high-pitched rage. Every single person chilling at the reservoir whipped their heads around. All 80 fishermen, a bunch of construction hands, my uncle, my main aunt, and the village cooking crew, all locking eyes on one random middle-aged woman, screaming at confused strangers about fake property deeds she totally lacked. One of the village ladies, who came through to help prep the food, pulled me aside and low-key whispered to see what was seriously going down in real time. Second Aunt was low-key pressed because I brought on other village ladies for the reservoir gig instead of picking her. After she tried to shake me down yesterday, there was zero chance I was handing her a paycheck. But in her own delusional narrative, she was getting iced out from the main bag and was ready to make everyone's life absolute hell. I stepped up, trying to keep a lid on the rage boiling behind my eyes. Second Aunt, what's the actual issue? She totally ghosted me and kept yelling right at the fishermen. They backed off, muttering, she's unhinged, and took the scenic route around her. Once she finally decided to acknowledge my presence, she dropped her true demand like a total bombshell. Hand over the shop. That little convenience store you're building. Give me the keys to run it, and we're cool. I honestly almost chuckled. I actually laughed, which was probably not a vibe. That storefront was already spoken for by my aunt. But even if it wasn't pulling up unannounced, blocking paths, harassing my crew and customers, and then demanding a business as a reward, that's not negotiating. That's straight up holding people hostage. Before I could snap back, a voice boomed from behind me. That made even Second Aunt flinch hard. You want to shop? Did I hear that right? My aunt had materialized out of thin air, gripping a bundle of unwashed green onions, like a weapon. She must have some kind of built-in radar for threats to her territory, because she crossed the whole construction zone. In record speed, what followed was the absolute wildest verbal smackdown I've ever witnessed between two middle-aged women. Second Aunt opened fire first. The shop should belong to a local from the village, not some outsider. My aunt clapped back. She's literally family to me. Invited directly by the boss. And what exactly has Second Aunt contributed to this project? Besides pure drama, Second Aunt pulled the nostalgia card, claiming her man helped my dad build our house ages ago. My aunt instantly shut that narrative down. She stated Second Aunt's husband slammed 2 beers and napped all day while my actual uncle carried all the heavy timber. Second Aunt shrieked that my aunt was lying. My aunt yelled back louder that Second Aunt was capping. The two of them were standing 3 feet apart, veins popping off their necks, pitching their voices to frequencies that probably trigger dogs. In the next county over, Second Aunt switched metas and went straight for the guilt trip, reminding me she used to bring me meals when my parents were away grinding. She asked if I had any soul left. My temple was throbbing so intensely, I felt like my head was going to pop off. I caught my breath and tossed her an actual job offer, managing order and security down at the reservoir. 3,200 yuan a month, solid bag. Honest labor. She straight up threw it right back in my face. Bro, you think I'm out here begging? She dead set wanted the entire shop or nothing at all. She marched straight into the middle of the trail and spread her arms wide like a total NPC roadblock. Not a single soul is passing until I get my way. My aunt let out a cold chuckle like, yeah, right, try stopping anyone. Then went right back at it, the decibels scaling up fast. All logic totally gone and green onions waving around looking wild. I'd seriously reached my breaking point enough. I screamed loud enough to low-key startle myself. Both of these women froze mid-sentence and locked eyes on me. Second ant flashed a smug grin, thinking I was finally folding. She dropped one final parting shot over her shoulder. While walking away, just think it over. Hit me up whenever you're finally ready. I completely ghosted her, didn't give anyone the time of day. Instead, I headed straight down to the dam, where a massive pile of shattered fishing poles had been stacking up over the last few days, totally snapped, cracked, and completely wrecked by the absolute units living in my water. There were easily about 20 or 30 of them. I grabbed the whole pile and hauled them over to the property line, dividing my turf from Second Ant's family estate, and started jamming them deep into the dirt, one by one constructing an improvised fence out of broken rods, marking the exact boundary where my land ended and hers started. 0 words spoken and absolutely no negotiations needed. Just a raw line of shattered carbon fiber, sticking straight out of the ground, acting as a premier petty power move and a massive middle finger. I planted the very last busted rod into the soil, stood up tall, and stepped back to vibe with my masterpiece. Over 30 snapped fishing rods, stuck right into the ground in a dead straight line, spaced out roughly a meter apart from each other. Some of them were just stubby bases, while others still had tangled lines dangling off the ends, swaying around gently in the breeze, looking like the saddest little white flags of surrender. Together they formed the pettiest, most aesthetic and absolute peak passive aggressive barrier in the entire history of country property wars. Second ant was standing about 15 meters away, completely buffering while trying to process what was going down. Her facial expression shifted from smug to totally lost, and then into something I can only describe as spiritually constipated. She finally caught on that I was staking out the borderline, her zone versus my zone. No words required, just a barricade of broken carbon fiber, communicating everything I couldn't say politely. Then the absolute best plot twist happened. A random angler strolled over, holding a pole that had literally just snapped in half. Fighting some huge fish boss mine broke too, bro. Can you add this to the fence line? I took it right out of his hands and plugged it straight into the earth at the very end of the row. Then 2 more guys showed up with their wreck gear. And then another. My fence was genuinely expanding organically, entirely powered by the exact same fish. That kept destroying everybody's equipment. Second ant watched this live community art project scale up in real time. Her jaw dropped wide open, shut it fast, opened it again, and eventually just hissed out, "You just wait," before aggressively storming away. Such a goofy threat coming from a grown adult who'd taken back-to-back LS over the last 2 days. While running my afternoon patrol, I noticed a low-key fascinating anomaly that temporarily pulled my head away from all that family drama. The crucian carp had completely capped out, every single one pulling out of the water. Sat right between 2.5 and 3 pounds, not even a gram past 3. Wild crucian carp usually max out at around 1.5 pounds, meaning 3 pounds was literally double their natural cap. Same exact vibe with the white striped fish. They were all topping out at about 1 pound, 2 ounces, which was precisely twice their standard maximum. My system could boost small fish up to double their biological limit and not an inch further. That was their hard wall. The big fish, though, green carp, grass carp, big head, their baseline limits are already massive, double their max, and you're dealing with absolute units. That belongs straight in a kaiju movie. That absolute unit that breached the water last night and snapped a rod while dragging 3 dudes across the bank. I still had 0 clue how much it weighed, and honestly I wasn't too pressed to find out. While I was deep in thought about fish science, one of the anglers provided the exact comic relief I desperately needed. This guy was sitting cross-legged by the shore, throwing up wild hand signs like an anime ninja main character, muttering under his breath. Someone asked what on earth he was doing. Deadass serious without a shred of irony. He replied, "I'm summoning the fish, bro. I saw it on a fishing TikTok. You bow to the water 3 times. Chant a secret phrase, and the fish pull up to you." A mini crowd rolled up to spectate this ritual. He stood up, cleared his throat, bowed 3 times to the reservoir, with straight-up reverence, and chanted gibberish nobody could understand. Then he sat right back down, with the unbothered confidence of a guy who just plugged in a cheat code, staring at his bobber with laser focus. 2 minutes later, his bobber twitched. 2 soft taps followed by aggressive drop downward. He jumped up yelling it actually worked, and yanked his rod. With the peak energy of a lottery winner, he reeled up a turtle, a tiny one, palm size, with all 4 legs tucked into its shell, probably ghosting the situation, regretting every life choice that brought him to this exact moment. The silence lasted exactly 1 second. before the whole reservoir absolutely lost it into the loudest fits of laughter I'd heard since opening day. Bro, your prayer wasn't locked in enough. The fish sent its vanguard first FR. That's not even a fish, that's the advanced scout. Keep chanting, and the main boss army will follow, bro. You literally summoned a turtle. The fish saw your ritual and sent their slowest player. As a prank, the poor guy stood there holding his turtle. Expression totally stuck between total cringe and absolute cluelessness over where his supposed mystic angling method went totally sideways. By dusk, twice as many folks were down a night fish compared to yesterday. I locked in a village kid named Ding Xiaojun to handle the graveyard shift security, fresh out of the military service, built like an absolute unit, and totally immune to staying awake through anything. 200 yuan a night, and the kid took the gig like it was a top-tier special ops mission. Absolute W higher while I was dragging myself toward the village, running on pure fumes after barely catching any sleep the night before. Out of nowhere, my phone blew up, Dad. My old man literally never calls. First, we went through the usual small talk, weather, food, health, skirting around whatever he actually wanted to bring up. I could totally sense the real agenda lurking behind every casual sentence, like a literal predator circling its prey. Then he dropped the bomb, your second, and hit up your mother. She was sobbing. Claimed you publicly humiliated her in front of a massive crowd and blocked her family's path with shattered fishing rods. Of course, she ran to my mom. Of course, she played the victim, tears and all. The exact same Karen who screamed at my customers and tried to shake me down for my business. Somehow flipped the narrative. Over a 10-minute phone call, I broke down what actually went down. Both incidents, the unfiltered truth. Pop, listen then. Hit me with that classic boomer parental line that drives every hustling kid absolutely insane. She's in the wrong, but you're the younger generation. Just hand her the shop, your aunt can do something else instead. Keep the peace, keep the peace. The absolute, eternal motto of every older parent who grew up broke and learned that dodging drama is cheaper than standing your ground. I totally got where he was coming from. No cap, I really did, but I gave him the hard truth. He didn't want to swallow if I bend the knee once. It's never ending today, it's the shop. Tomorrow, a cut of the earnings. Next month, she'll want the entire reservoir. Toxic takers. Don't stop leeching just because you play nice. They only back off when you make it crystal clear. There's literally nothing left to steal. Dad went dead silent, then hit me with a classic guilt trip. Your wings got pretty stiff now, huh? Too big to listen to your old man anymore. He wasn't actually mad, he was just boxed in. A lifetime of keeping his head down and dodging confrontation left him with zero playbook for this kind of chaos. I didn't argue back, some battles aren't worth fighting, especially with someone who actually cares about you, but is totally blind to the game you're playing. He hung up. I stood beneath the ancient tree right at the village entrance, taking in the fresh scent of grass in the evening breeze, feeling totally wiped out, yet 100% confident I made the right move. My barricade of broken rods was staying put. All my boundary lines were locked down, and way up by the reservoir, Ding Xiaojun was already patrolling the banks, while anglers threw hands with absolute units in the dark, their headlamps cutting through the pitch black, like miniature lighthouses steering my future straight into port. Night fishing pulled in a massive 48-pound grass carp, alongside a 55-pound green carp. Yet nobody had managed to smash the 100-pound milestone. That number was turning into the ultimate holy grail of my reservoir. Every single fisherman who rolled up had it practically tattooed inside. Their eyelids ding, shout, June held down security, like the absolute military machine. He is weighing catches and keeping total order. While I finally got the first legit night of sleep I'd seen in ages, I bounced out of bed early feeling like a totally different person. When I rolled up to the reservoir, my shattered rod fence had somehow expanded overnight. The night shift had officially added their casualties to the collection. That fence was transforming into the most brutally honest ad. In fishing history, two fresh faces pulled up, and one started low-key whining about the crazy drive they just made, and how this better not be total cap. His buddy just pointed straight at the wall of broken rods and dropped the question, does that look fake to you? They walked right up, snapped some pics, and the hater went dead silent for good. Then the floodgates opened. Cars kept rolling in nonstop, starting at 7 in the morning. I stood right on the dam, holding my QR code, acting like a toll booth worker, guarding the gates of fish paradise, watching the tally climb higher. 42 by 7:30, 61 by 8:30, 78 at 9:89 by 9:30. Every single scan packed another 100-fold speed boost. straight into the aquatic time machine. My uncle rolled up carrying 2 massive extra-large cooking pots. Because fueling this absolute beast with yesterday's tiny setup would have felt like trying to fill an entire swimming pool. Using a kitchen teaspoon, my aunt's pop-up shop was officially live, featuring a wooden plank, with prices scrawled in shaky red letters. 3 yuan for water, 5 bucks for instant noodles. Cigarettes marked up 1 yuan over retail value. She was already vibing with the crowd, like she had been grinding in sales her whole life, handing out free tissues to totally drained night anglers, and greeting everyone like her own brother, using that signature foghorn voice of hers. One customer told her straight up she offered better service than any convenience store back in the city. She lit up like she just took home a Nobel Prize. Then a pristine white SUV pulled up, and my stomach did a weird little flip. Ponytail Girl was back on site, and this time, she was rocking heavy camouflage fishing gear, with her sleeves rolled all the way up, looking less like she came to catch fish, and more like she was ready for all-out war. She marched straight up to my spot, chin held high, and dropped the line, like a classic movie villain making their epic sequel return. I told you I was coming back for my ultimate payback. Behind her, about half a dozen folks were unlading some heavy-duty gear. She pointed at a dude, setting up a camera tripod right by a pickup truck. Peep him right there, that's Lee Doggone. Lee Genova with 52K followers online. A total pro fishing content creator. He's reeled in more monster fish than you've seen in your entire life. Your Reservoir's aquatic life is totally cooked. I checked the guy out, late 20s. Buzz-cut skin tan by the sun. Arms looking like he wrestles grizzlies for fun. Straight up legit, totally seasoned. Definitely here to put on a show. I gave a nod and said welcome. QR code's right here. Her face low-key glitched. For real, that's your whole reaction. What kind of reaction were you expecting? Should I be shaking in my boots? She shot daggers at me with her eyes and stormed off to help rig up the cameras. I honestly had zero clue what she wanted from me. An elite angler showing up to catch my fish was literally the best possible promo I could ever ask for. 52,000 stands. Watching someone pull absolute units out of my reservoir. I should be cutting her a paycheck. Lee Jinhua wrapped up filming his intro and strolled over to chop it up on camera. Naturally, he asked about the rates. I told him 200 for a full day pass. He pulled that classic influencer card. How about I fish for free and keep whatever I pull out? I'm doing you a massive favor with this exposure. I looked right at him thinking, bro, your clout means absolutely nothing if you don't scan that code. Because without paying customers, my fish won't accelerate, and without that growth boost, there are no beasts for you to stream. No deal, everybody pays to play. He doubled down. I'm stressing you might take an L on me. I'm super cracked. Let's do a cashback per pound. Go ahead and try to bankrupt me then. He realized his tactics weren't hitting at all, flashed a smooth showman grin, and muttered, don't catch feelings or regrets later. Then all 6 of them scanned 6 more sound bites, 600 more entries, and then boom. Something happened that I genuinely did not see coming. The exact second that 6 scan registered, my brain went wild like a fireworks show. A system notification I'd never heard before, way louder. Deeper, totally different from the usual ding. Echoed straight through my skull. Ultimate Fisherman System upgrade active. 3 brand new features unlocked all at once. A lucky spin wheel, a fish stocking network, and a complimentary upgrade care package. My hands were low-key shaking. I had no idea the system could even level up. It had just been sitting there doing one single trick, speeding up time since day one. Now, out of nowhere, it was expanding like a live service game, dropping fresh expansions right after hitting a milestone. I pulled up the spin wheel, first 12 slots total. Every single one stamped with a mystery question mark. 0 previews, 0 hints. Pure, unadulterated gotcha, gambling the price. 1000 yuan per spin. I stared dead at it for like 3 seconds and shut it down, dropping $1,000 just to spin a sketchy prize wheel. When I was literally trying to fund a new kitchen, a shop, and a restroom? Absolutely not. Today was not the day. The system was totally trying to finesse me, and I wasn't about to fall for that trap yet. 10,000 times time acceleration mode activated. 100 anglers dropping 200 each, total 20,000 yuan, just for the entry pass. Before a single massive fish even hit the scale, a clout-chasing influencer with 50,000 followers was about to broadcast my humble reservoir to the entire web. Some ponytail girl who thought she was low-key threatening me was actually the best free promoter I could have ever asked for. Plus a system interface that just unlocked. A whole tier I didn't even know was possible, packed with hidden features I hadn't even checked out yet. Flexing insane potentials I couldn't even wrap my head around. Just a week ago, I was eating cheap instant ramen all by myself in a ghost house, while the neighborhood called me an absolute loser. Now I was chilling up on the dam, watching 100 people literally fight over the privilege of handing me their cash, while deep beneath the dark surface, an army of overpowered mutant fish was aging up like crazy every single second, and a brand new bonus bundle sat right in my inventory, sitting there like an unopened holiday gift. I swiped the system panel closed, took a deep breath, and got straight back to the grind. The mystery bundle could totally wait. The Lucky Wool wasn't going anywhere, but those 100 hungry fishermen needed lunch right now. And poor uncle only had 2 hands to work with. This system upgrade hit me like an absolute jump scare to the brain. 3 brand new features just materialized out of thin air. A gotcha spin wheel, an instant fish stocking menu, and a starter gift pack. I had zero clue this thing could even level up. For weeks, it was just a one-trick pony running background tasks, just speeding up time, and now it was suddenly expanding, like it had been. Gatekeeping epic updates for a major milestone. Apparently bringing in 100 anglers was the magic cheat code. That spin wheel was pure pay-to-win gambling. 12 mystery slots with 0 preview perks. Costing $1 per spin, I just stared at it. The exact way a guy on a strict cut looks at a giant chocolate fudge cake. Tempted as hell, but smart enough not to touch it just yet. Dropping 1,000 yuan for a total blind drop. The system was trying to run my pockets, and I wasn't about to let that slide. The fish stocking mechanic was a whole different vibe, featuring a comprehensive catalog of every aquatic species in my lake, all available for instant purchase right at flat market value. Just buy the fish and boom, they instantly spawn in the water. No sketchy delivery trucks, no middleman hassle. No lugging heavy buckets of fingerlings up a steep mountain. Just one tap and they're stocked. This was low-key game-breaking. I could micromanage exactly what populated my reservoir, fill in any weird gaps, add some meta variety, and build the ultimate custom underwater ecosystem. It felt like I was playing a god-tier aquarium sandbox game. Then I finally popped open the gift box, and my hands started shaking with hype. 2 overpower drops. Item number 1. A 10 times speed booster card that stacks directly on top of active acceleration for a solid hour. And item number 2. A legendary free Mekong giant catfish fingerling. The legendary Mekong giant catfish. Straight up the biggest freshwater beast on Earth, where fully grown adults easily breach 600 pounds, and my broken system literally doubles the natural biological ceiling for literally any species. So 600 times 2 hits 1,200 pounds per fish. That's the actual weight of a compact car, just cruising around inside my private reservoir, getting absolutely massive every single second. I had to physically force myself not to completely spaz out, dropping that free trial catfish right into the depths ASAP. Then I rushed back to the spawn menu, only to find out that more Mekong giant catfish fingerlings were officially ready to be bought for a cool 1,000 yuan a pop. I stared dead at that price tag for like 4 solid seconds. Thought hard about my rapidly flatlining bank account. Visualized a 1,200-pound monster, and YOLO'd 10 more. 10,000 yuan vanished from my balance into thin air, and my savings took a hit that genuinely felt like a gut punch. But deep down in the murky depths of my reservoir, 11 tiny baby catfish had just spawned out of nowhere, and they were about to scale up crazy fast, because I clearly wasn't done making unhinged plays. I had over 100 anglers locked in on site, and with a 10,000x base acceleration running, the 10x time card was about to skyrocket that to 100,000x. Yeah, a literal 100,000 times speed boost, meaning a single hour translates to 11 full real-world years. That's 11 years of pure growth packed into 60 minutes flat, meaning those tiny little catfish would easily hit 200 or 300 pounds by lunchtime, so I popped the card instantly with zero hesitation. The water's surface didn't even ripple, and visually speaking, absolutely nothing happened, though underneath, completely hidden from mortal eyes. Except for the laws of physics I was breaking, all 11 baby catfish were inflating like biological balloons. Meanwhile, that massive fishing influencer Li Jinhua, better known by his alias Rod Brother, was setting up his stream, moving like a one-man media powerhouse, with 2 cameras on tripods, a phone locked in vertically, and a high-end pro mic clipped right to his collar. Boasting 52K followers, the guy had driven 6 hours straight through the night, after seeing that viral 5-car fish parade clip that had already smashed past 10 million views. That ponytail girl, whose government name turned out to be Su Qing, Had personally slid into his DMs to invite him over, to completely flex on and trash my reservoir on live broadcast. His stream kicked off with a slick cinematic pan across the lake, capturing the massive crowd of fishermen, and my iconic, thoroughly wrecked makeshift fence in the background. He reeled in 10,000 concurrent viewers within the first hour, and the chat was zooming as folks instantly recognized my reservoir, straight from those viral TikTok videos. Someone in chat jokingly asked if local traffic cops were camping nearby, while another troll suggested just strapping the fish to the sides of their cars, this time around to totally dodge tickets. Man, the internet never forgets a thing. Lee Jinhua was actually legit talented, though. His bait mixing game was precision tuned down to the exact milliliter, and he spent a solid 15 minutes scouting out his spot, finally locking onto a steep drop-off, with a shallow water met the deep abyss. The exact hot zone where lunkers love to patrol. All the veteran anglers watching him nodded in low-key respect. This wasn't some clout-chasing fake influencer pretending to fish. This was a certified pro fisherman, who also happened to be lugging cameras around. Su Qing was right beside me, flexing harder than an absolute main character. Look at that. Now, that is peak skill. When I lost my catch, it wasn't a skill issue. Your fish are just built different. Today, Rod Bro is in the building, and your massive fish finally met their match. I stayed totally quiet, maybe just smirking a bit. Why are you smirking? I'm not. Your lips are literally moving. That's just the breeze. She gave me a major side eye. She knew something was sus. Just couldn't put her finger on it. What she had zero clue about was that 11 massive Mekong giant catfish were currently glitching up at 100k times normal speed, right underneath her precious pro angler's spot. And in less than an hour, they'd be swole enough to tow a whole yacht. Li Jinhua reeled in a few tiny crucian carp and tossed them back with major clout-chasing energy. Too small today. I'm only pulling up 100-pounders minimum. His chat was literally going bonkers. He flexed to his 50k viewers that he wasn't stepping away from this reservoir until he bagged an absolute unit. Vets were locked in. Hype was real. Popcorn was ready 15 minutes later. Mid-sentence. While dropping chat about bait ratios to his stream, his rod slammed down hard. He reacted in a millisecond. Feet locked in, body leaning way back. Hands gripping the handle, big boss level. The chat went totally feral. Su Qing was bouncing beside me. She whipped around, with a W already stamped all over her face. Look, 1 hour, and he's already hooked a raid boss. Your fish are just sitting ducks waiting to. She never got to finish that sentence. 3 seconds after the hook set, whatever was on the other end stopped playing around. The rod plunged down with such insane force. It bent way past any limit the factory ever stress-tested. Props to the gear, it somehow didn't snap in half. But Li Jinhua, with all his muscle, all his pro stats, all 52k followers watching live on stream, none of it mattered. His sneakers left the dirt. His whole body went sliding forward, like someone hooked him up to a speeding truck. He tried to let go, but his reflexes were way too slow for this. Splash. Rod Bro, legendary fishing content creator, face planted right into my reservoir on live cam, dragged him by a fish in front of 10k live viewers. 5 seconds flat from hook set to involuntary swimming lesson. The entire shoreline went ghost town silent. Su Qing's jaw dropped open like a broken vending machine. The stream chat went totally blank for 2 solid seconds. 10k people simultaneously too shook to type a single key. Then the comment section absolutely imploded into what I bet was the most chaotic spam wall in streaming history. I stood on the bank watching Li Jinhua's camera crew scramble like mad toward the water, watching Su Qing's main character aura evaporate in real time, and thought about those 11 catfish beefing up in the deep. If a regular oversized fish could, yanking a pro streamer into the drink in 5 seconds flat. What goes down when an absolute unit of a beast actually decides to strike? The answer was lurking right at the bottom of my reservoir, swelling up larger by the second. And for the first time since I kicked off this hustle, I honestly didn't know if I should be hyped or terrified. Li Jinhua broke the surface of my reservoir, looking like a total drowned rat drowning in debt, soaking wet from head to toe. Stringy pond, weed tangled in his hair. His last shred of dignity floating away downstream. The silver lining was the water only came up to his waist. The brutal reality, his 52,000 stands just watched him get yanked straight into the lake by a fish on live camera. His rod completely gone dragged into the deep abyss by whatever absolute monster decided that a pro fisherman was the main character who needed a dose of humility today. His live stream skyrocketed from 10K viewers to 20K. In roughly 30 seconds, turns out. Nothing feeds the internet algorithm. Quite like watching an expert catch an absolute L in 4K. The chat was straight up ruthless. People roasting him asking if he came to fish or swim. People telling him to rebrand his whole channel. Someone even pointed out he swore he wouldn't leave without landing a 100-pounder, and technically speaking, the fish just invited him over for a personal visit. The comment section was living its best life. And Li Jinhua was the ultimate punchline. Su Qing's face turned completely cherry red. She had spent the last 2 days hyping this guy up as their secret weapon. The absolute legend who would tame my reservoir. And he literally lasted all of 5 seconds before becoming the reservoir's newest lawn ornament. I couldn't help myself. I shot her a look and murmured smoothly, "Looks like your guy wasn't quite built for this either." She didn't say a word probably, because her jaw was still glued to the dirt. But here is what set Li Jinhua apart. From an average guy, the man simply refused to fold. He stood right in front of his rolling camera, dripping wet and gasping for air, and dropped a truth bomb to his audience. That made me lock in and pay close attention. He stated, across 3 years of grinding fishing spots nationwide, the biggest catch of his life was a 120-pound green carp. Then he paused and swore that the creature that just dragged him under weighed several hundred pounds. At the bare minimum, the chat spammed him as a fraud, calling him completely delusional, saying the lake water fried his brain cells. But I could read his eyes. There wasn't a hint of embarrassment in them, just pure obsession. The kind of unhinged energy that makes a guy dangerous. He announced he wasn't backing down. Not until he reeled in whatever pulled him down. Then he marched over to his pickup and hauled out something that made every single angler on the bank stop breathing: a heavy-duty deep-sea fishing rod. The kind engineered for brutal ocean battles with tuna, featuring an ultra-thick carbon fiber build, a reel roughly the size of a fist, spooled with 500 meters of heavy braided line, rated to handle over 1,000 pounds of brutal drag. This was absolute deep-sea heavy-duty artillery, and this madman was about to test it in my local lake. The chat went completely wild, spitting jokes about bringing a nuke to a fistfight, everyone calling him an absolute lunatic. He locked the rod down onto a heavy steel mount, looked straight into the lens, and hyped up his chat, swearing that if he didn't hook a literal unit today, he wouldn't even cut the stream. 50,000 live viewers, and the numbers kept climbing. Meanwhile, I was low-key stressing over a secret crisis. The time warp buff was making the fish mutate way too fast. The size gap between species was getting out of pocket. The small fry stayed tiny, because they hit their hard biological cap, at double their normal max size. But the apex predators kept scaling up. With zero-chill rods were snapping left and right like twigs. Over 10 shattered in barely 2 hours flat. If this kept snowballing, casual anglers wouldn't stand a ghost of a chance, other than taking home LS and busted gear. No one's dropping 200 yuan just to watch their rod blow up. I had to restock the bottom of the food chain ASAP, bringing in fresh small fish, so regular visitors could actually catch something. I booted up the stocking menu and started spamming orders, like a panic buyer clearing shelves before a storm. 1,000 grass carp fingerlings, 1,000 green carp, 500 common carp, 2,000 Christian carp. Nearly 20,000 yuan vanished from my balance. In about 30 seconds flat. Cash I'd barely finished grinding was already gone. My wallet plummeted from 5 digits down to a sad 4. It genuinely hurt my soul. But if I didn't keep the ecosystem balanced, the whole business model would crash and burn. A fishing spot where you only hook raid bosses. Sounds sick until you realize 90% of your clients lack the gear or the stats to handle those monsters. Oh, and I'd also dropped 11 Mekong giant catfish into the depths about an hour ago, boosted by a 100,000x acceleration cheat code. Those beasts were currently growing at a pace that'll make a high-speed time-lapse look like a sluggish snail by now. They were probably already massive compared to most of my clients' personal record catches, and they'd only been chilling in my water for 60 minutes. I didn't even dare to imagine what kind of absolute units they'd be by tomorrow. Li Jinhua's broadcast was slowly bleeding viewers during the slow lulls, because watching someone fish is honestly a total snooze fest. When nothing happens, he starts geeking out over technique, explaining bait science, and flexing his gear. Yet the chat kept spamming the exact same question. Yo, when are you taking another swim? His pure awkwardness was way more hilarious than his actual skill. Classic internet behavior right there. Still, Clips of his glorious wipeout were going viral. Fans were editing his epic fall, throwing in cinematic slow-mo and meme sound effects, posting it all over the socials. And a fresh wave of viewers kept stumbling onto the stream through those viral edits. So even as the OGs got bored and dipped out, a fresh wave of newbies just flooded in. The viewer count was low-key vibing between 20 and 30K for hours, which is absolute W numbers by his usual standards. The dude usually only pulls a few thousand heads. Today he was straight up entering mainstream territory, fueled entirely by pure embarrassment and the ultimate aura of revenge. At 4:10 p.m., his bobber dipped hard, and the dead air was completely fried. Lee Jinhua's entire physique snapped right into action, like someone literally zapped his seat with a taser. He clutched the heavy rod with a death grip in both hands and yanked skyward. The braided line went tighter than an electric guitar string, vibrating intensely against the water's surface. 50,000 live watchers held their breath all at once. The live chat turned into a nonstop waterfall of hype, jokes, and people begging him to wipe out and fall in again. Random anglers all around me ditched their own spots and swarmed right over to his zone. Wangbin suddenly pulled up beside me and asked if I thought this absolute unit was over 100. I told him it definitely looked like it for 20 minutes of absolute grind and stalemate. The beast stayed deep down, cruising right along the floor. Refusing to budge, Lee Jinhua was soaking wet with sweat, his arms trembling from the nonstop pressure. Yet his face had that locked-in, main character focus of a guy who knows this is the exact turning point of his life. 45 minutes deep, the water's surface literally exploded. A massive silhouette rolled up through the depths and broke right out into the daylight, with a pitch-black back and a glistening frame, thick enough to leave the entire crowd shook and totally silent.